Self-Insurance Board Committee agenda, and we're starting today at 10 a.m. If I could ask Commissioner Brown to give the invocation.
Lord, as we come before you at this time, we are always mindful of the people of this county. Help us to put them forward. Help them to always be the focal point that we are trying to serve. We are servants of yours as well as servants. Lord, we know that as your servants, we ask wisdom to use the knowledge that we have at our hand to make decisions, to do those things that are right in you. You sent your Son to a hostile world that crucified him. We're so grateful that you loved us that much. We ask this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ.
So I'd like to ask for approval of the agenda.
So before you do that, if I can interject, can we move executive session to the tail?
I'll make a motion to move the executive session to the tail at the end of the meeting.
I'll move. Or second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any? All right, motion passes. We'll move the executive session to the end. I'd also like to make a motion to move employee-related items to the top of the agenda. That will be old item A, EMA insurance, new business B and C, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move the employee-related items to the top.
So, are we going to move B and C under old business, or are we going to keep them under new business?
B and C under old business.
No, B and C under new business. So you want to move up, or you want to move
We're going to move
up
them
new
all the
business?
way to the top of the agenda.
All the way to the top of the agenda.
Yes, if they have to wait through, all the way through old business, it'll be a while.
So you're moving,
We're moving them ahead of old.
so you're moving A, B, new business, and B and C of old business.
Yes, that's what we voted on. Is everybody clear? Old business A, new business B and C will come to the top of old business.
What about old business B involves the sheriff and his employees, so A and B? That's what I was asking, sorry.
I'd
A,
like
B.
to make an additional motion to also move old business B and C so that the sheriff's office can get back to doing a great job. Can I get a motion in a second? Second. I'll make the motion. Mary, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passed. Now, to reiterate, above old business, we're going to go old A, old B, old C, new B, new C. Is everybody clear? Recognition of the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes. Motion to approve.
Second.
Just 1 second. I was wondering, I was looking through it just quickly. Does it state who was present in the minutes? I'm missing it. Oh, over here. That's for sure. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, seeing none. We have approval of the minutes. Report of the chairman. I do not have any report today. Report of the finance director.
No report.
So we go to, under old business, item A, EMA, insurance, and volunteers. In your packet, page 6, what we have in front of us is EMA has 3 insurance policies. We've discussed these before. This is the smaller of the 3 policies. It is due for renewal in December. So are there any questions, any discussion? I'll make a motion to approve it. We'll get a second and we can discuss.
So moved.
Second, I'd like to discuss.
Yes. Mary, you're in queue.
Okay, so kind of explain to me, I understand they have their own, some of their, what policies, what's this policy for? Property? Or what?
Yes.
Could you brief me again about it, please?
Yes, I'll be glad to. This piece of the policy, actually, I'll let her explain what this piece covers. I'll also point out to you just briefly that this is a small coverage. We only pay $1,800 for this policy.
I guess start
Can you briefly, do you want to? We'll need to make a motion to suspend the rules. I'll make the motion, second, all in favor? Aye.
Okay, I'll say, that's work comp policy,
Yes.
and it comes in due at a different time. And for some reason, every year, they've got full-time people on the volunteer work comp, and we get a refund for it, and we'll try to straighten that out, and we'll work on that again. But when we get audited on that every year, and when we submit our audit, we get, and we clear the audit, we get a refund, and, I try to work that out to get the full-time people off of that, because we're covered on county, and we'll continue to work on that. So, but that's what that is.
How long have you been working on trying to do that?
This is probably the second year that's happened.
I have a question regarding and I know it was new information for me that you send the roster to the insurance company. Can we get a roster for them?
You can, but I'd rather not go out, because, I'd rather, if you want it, you can have it, but I just don't want to go out.
I can't guarantee anything, anybody that's
Show me.
participating
Yeah.
right now.
I mean, I don't know why you need to know who's on it, but,
Before it comes, because Kim's gonna purchase it, or Kim one, who's gonna be, and it's been moved to risk management, who's gonna be purchasing the insurance this year?
she does. She does all that, yes, sir.
So we may need to request that Kim send a letter to Kim the way she can purchase the insurance.
Well, I just don't want it going out. It's not a matter of who has it.
Well, I'm not saying, I'm
I
just
just don't-
for her to get the quote.
I don't know why you would need to know who was on the roster.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
make
yes.
sure all the
Yes,
i's
ma'am.
are dotted.
Yes, sir.
This policy, my understanding, and correct me, this would be if we have a volunteer that goes out to an emergency situation, they break their leg, this is the policy that's going to cover them.
It
Is
is
that correct?
responding to or going home, an act of, a Good Samaritan Act, they roll upon crash and they get out and help, it covers them then. So, yeah.
You have a question, Mr. Lawyer?
I do. So this covers them outside of the scope of volunteer
No,
work for the
just in
county?
the scope of what we do.
But you said Good Samaritan work, if they happen to drive on an
If they're
accident.
going on an accident, it covers them then.
But that's unrelated to something the county may be actively
Right,
involved in.
exactly, but that's stated in the policy. That's
That
something
it's
they offer.
covered.
That's something they offer, yes, sir.
And whose income are they basing a volunteer's pay for OJI?
There's, it was, the base amount's like $600. I can show you the exact, it's not based on salary, it's based on a certain amount, for a week. I think it might be $600.
And to clarify, because I had trouble with this issue, that's not coming out of our OJI fund or the state. This is a separate fund coming from this insurance company that's
Yes.
paying that workers' comp to these volunteers.
Yes, exactly.
Because it took me a while to understand that.
It's only been a little over $1,000 a year, so it's not a big cost. This particular policy.
How long have you been, it has nothing to do with my decision, how long have you been under this? Oh, it sounds like you've been
As long as I've been there 43 years.
Excellent, so we've been covering the volunteers. Okay.
Before my time.
Got a
Here, right
question
here.
on page 14 of the manual. It's employee dishonesty blanket, computer and fund transfers, fraud, impersonation, and identity fraud expense. Is this
That's
to
another one.
protect the government against a dishonest employee?
Just to protect the county.
That's what it said,
Yes.
protect the county against a
To protect the
dishonest
county.
employee.
Yes. And I'm gonna call, I was actually reading up on this morning, there's an alcohol piece, and I don't know what that's for. I don't know if it's, if somebody is drinking, which they shouldn't be, but, I read that, and I'm gonna ask the question about that, because I don't know what that is.
I believe the one you're looking at is on page 22 forward. I believe that's the other policy that
Speaking
you're
of
looking
that,
at.
do you have a policy where they sign off some type of liability waiver that says I won't
We
show
don't have
up?
to have, we don't have to have, we do, we've got our beneficiary stuff, but, and I don't know if they offer anything like that, I can look into that.
Just, with you bringing up the, what is with the alcohol thing,
Oh, that's that
you know,
person, yeah.
don't come, if we call, don't come if you're already having Friday
Well, they know
night
that, I mean, I've had people say, I had a beer, I'm not coming out, fine, and they know that, If you don't drink, you don't have that problem, so I don't have that problem.
But
I'm not worried about it.
the policy you're talking about, I believe, starts on 22, not the page we're looking at there. So this says accident and sickness summary of coverage, that's for that
Accident
one.
sickness is different from the work comp, yeah.
Oh, so there's another one in
Yeah.
here?
Accident sickness, if they get hurt or dismembered, it's got a schedule in there to pay for that,
So this is not the 2018, this was part of the other one.
yes.
Back here then.
So to reiterate, today we are addressing the Berkshire Hathaway
That's the last page.
on page 21. There are some other pieces of policy in there that Mr. Long is pointing out. So before us now is to, does anyone have any more questions for Mr. White?
One other question, the schedule of vehicles here. These are, I mean, is the county covering vehicles?
So
They can't cover our volunteers.
if I could interrupt for a moment, that's on the other policy and we'll cover it when we cover them. This is not, the vehicles, if you can, if I'm correct, are not under this policy that we're
They
discussing.
are,
They're under this,
they're on that schedule.
on this $1,800
On the,
coverage.
no, on the big policy.
We're not covering.
No,
big
that's just
policies.
work comp.
That's the only one we're covering right now.
Right now,
is
yes,
right-
ma'am.
So the vehicles are on the other policy that we'll talk about in a
Which is in
different
this
Sorry, you
one. It's not till,
June.
yeah. And I think we did a multi-year bid on that too, so
Yeah, we
it
did.
may still be under
Yeah.
bid. I don't know if this is the second or third year, you may, is this the second year or third year on it?
First year.
First year on the bid,
It's 23.
it'll be second year.
Okay. We didn't do a new bid, so it's,
Last
probably
year.
have to rebid next year.
It'd be last year.
So, Bob, your question for the vehicles is on a different policy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just going in order here, that was up the top.
So there's two things there, Bob. That if we have a volunteer driving, it covers them, and if we total a $50,000 truck, it's the replacement cost at $250, not whatever the county's, deductible or cost is to replace that vehicle.
Are there any more questions? Bob, did that answer your question, Mr. Wagner? Okay. So I'll call us back into session. So the motion in front of us is to approve the Berkshire Hathaway policy, which we'll send it out to bid. The price last year was $1,800 and a little change. So I make a motion
It's the quote.
to do that quote.
What's the BSI? That's the first one that's in my number. This is the second one, Berkshire Hathaway is second, so what's that?
There's
first?
three policies. First one's property and
I know
casualty.
it's property.
So the VFIS is the company, the insurance company.
And they have the first thing, they have two of the three policies.
Yes, and the one that we're looking at now, it comes from Berkshire.
So,
So you'll get a quote, a new quote.
I'm making a motion that we send it out for bid.
Well, Kim will get a quote, it's
Kim will
way
get a
below the
quote.
bid, just
Yeah,
a
it's right,
quote.
yeah.
way below bid.
So are we approving the quote, or are we approving the money?
I think you're just approving keeping the policy
Gotcha, okay.
in concept, not the particular policy, but a
Approving
policy
the policy, this policy, that will be going back,
for
getting
some.
a new clause from Berkshire that we assume will be similar in cost to provide for these items that we discussed.
I make a motion we approve to get it moving.
Can I get a second?
So,
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Next item up is old business B, OJI plan sheriff. So first I'd like to have, whichever one of you would like to go first. We have both items coming from, we discussed this in our last meeting, if you'll remember. And we had legal concerns as well as financial. So if we could briefly, because you went over it before, if you could briefly state where we're at, if you could take the financial piece first, Mr. Long.
The financial, we just need to make sure that we're treating the taxes correctly, and it'd be something I could spend a lot of time researching, or I think we just need to really get probably a tax attorney to look at it. What the IRS code says, if you are under a valid workers' comp claim, and we're taking OJI in lieu of it, that the amount that you pay the employees is tax exempt. But with us, and I couldn't find anything to clearly state either way, but with us paying the extra third taxable, the question is the IRS still viewing us under a valid claim and making it taxable? That's something we need to explore. That's the financial concern. That's the only one I'm at, and I think that's my biggest concern is make sure we're doing the taxes correctly.
Have you made any calls between our last meeting and this one to get us in?
No, I mean, that would be something, because, you know, if we're gonna look at that, probably with the committee approve us to look at it, and then also go through legal, retained attorneys.
So can you give us, the legal?
Yeah, I have not done any tax research. It's not been put in front of me yet, but as far as the plan itself, I just have to boil everything down to its essence, is that the deputies are county employees, and that basically the rule of thumb is you treat every employee the same, and if it's just 66% to all the other employees, I don't know how we can justify carving out a group of county employees that get 100%. And till that question's answered, or I guess dug into more, then I would better know how to legally research this, because if it just needs to be brought down to 66 across the board, and that's a decision, then there's nothing to research. We just keep marching on the way we have been. If we're looking at doing this carve-out, then I will have to probably see if any other areas are doing this, see if it's been litigated, and as far as taxes go, I will have to retain a tax attorney to give us a legal opinion on how that needs to be handled.
I'll make a motion to open discussion on the OJI plan.
second.
Does everybody understand how it works? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think they need to discover if we're in compliance. I mean, that's the biggest thing. To avoid any IRS issues, I certainly wouldn't want the IRS coming and knocking on the mayor's door, right? So I think that it's prudent that the legal and the finance department incorporate and be able to engage the IRS attorney to find out if we're in compliance and find out what we're doing is correct. And I would make a motion to give them the authority to do that, if that's appropriate. If that's okay. I mean, if this is the body where we would do that, because I think that anybody that deals with the IRS, or whoever has dealt with the IRS, knows that it's laborious and there's so many little niche laws and all that kind of stuff. So I would suggest that we allow the legal office and the finance department to incorporate that person to be able to see if it's correct, because it spins my head knowing what that other third, because 66% of that workers' comp is the amount that they get, and it's tax-free, I'm pretty sure.
It is.
Tax-free, so you have another third that's, you have to be careful, like you said, that it's being taxed properly out of the person's check.
We are taxing the other third, but the question is, do they view us that we're under a valid plan if we're doing something outside of OJI, or does it make the first 2/3 taxable? That's the question I've had for several times and never got a good resolution on it, so.
But I mean, that is, and I agree with them, I think that this is very dark and muddled, and it needs to be opened and clean and taken care of so that we don't fall into some issue later on down the road.
I will do whatever this committee instructs me to do. However, I think the first question that needs to be answered is, do we want to pay a portion of the county employees, a block of them, do we want to do their OJI differently? Because I think that's a standalone problem itself.
Right.
Is how the other employees are being treated. Because I've got to look at everybody as a stick, you know, they're county employees or not. So if that's the will of this committee, that carve it out and based on the nature of the job they do, that they should be getting this additional amount, I'll be more than glad to research the rest of it, but I just don't want you all to waste the time or the money researching something when at the end of the day, you would have not applied it differently.
So the two issues are paying a group of people in the county a different process than the rest of the people that work in the county.
It is OJI specific.
It's OJI specific. So there should be it should be across the board the same. It really should be. I mean, I worked in a different department, I'd be like, wait a minute, hey, how about that? So that in itself is a...
Well, the answer to that question could negate further research and discussion is all I'm saying.
Right, you would save yourself some money on an IRS or tax attorney if you took care of it and eliminated the extra 33%.
Yes, or if we go the other route, yes, we would need some approval between the finance director and myself to research the aspects of it so that it's properly implemented.
If we were to decide to go ahead and apply this to the other employees, one would have to find a bucket of money. But then we would still have our IRS issues. They would have to be, and I do not want to call and ask any questions because I don't want to red flag it. And I really don't want to instruct them to call Commerce and Insurance and ask them because it'll red flag us.
Right now, the sheriff's department pays the other third out of the regular budget, so they're large enough they can absorb that. Some of the larger departments probably could, but I'm not sure the smaller department, if you had 2 employees and one got hurt and you moved them to OJI, that you could really afford to pay them the other third and not bring somebody temporarily in. I don't know.
But am I correct, we still have an IRS question?
We do have a question about the IRS. Would we have to contact the IRS directly? Not necessarily. We would get an opinion first. That's the whole purpose of the tax attorney, and they're their own breed of attorney.
Right, they specialize, and I can research a thing. I'm gonna spend so much time researching, I can get my other.
I know.
I spent some time researching, but I come back to the same conclusion.
What is your recommendation?
I think the first thing we need to do is get a tax attorney and answer the tax question of the feasibility if there's any issues, if we have to tax the first third if we do that. Since we're doing this outside of OJI, it may be an issue now, but if you add it into your OJI across the board, it may make it disappear, but I'm not sure since we're paying them. It could be if you're paying tax exempt on the first 2/3 and taxable on the last third, that they actually made more not working.
Well, are they truly under an OJI plan at that point?
That's been my question, because our OJI document upstairs doesn't say you get made up to the first third. So my question is, are we under a valid workers' comp plan, or are we under a plan in lieu of a valid workers' comp plan? That's what's spinning in my head. We have a valid one upstairs, but we're given an additional amount. Does that make us not validly following it? I don't know. it's very far down, it's more of a, almost a litigatable thing with the IRS, that's why we probably need an attorney. What they think, are we on solid ground? I'll be happy to work with them, but we need somebody who can give us an answer what they think their probable outcome is, if they did ever flag with the IRS.
I agree with David on this one. I think before we go anywhere, we need a legal opinion. And I think Commissioner has already made that motion.
I'll make the motion that within 30 days,
So we have a motion.
We'll contact them.
I'd like to amend it. This is a matter that needs to move ahead.
Well, he seconded my motion.
Can you restate?
It's to give them the authority to go get respondents from the tax attorney, am I correct? IRS attorney.
Basically, at work, I send a detailed email to my concerns to Mr. Settler, since he retains attorneys, he would retain a tax attorney. But if they're in high demand, it may take us longer than 30 days.
I was gonna say 30 days is the time window.
To get them retained, but I can get the information to him quickly and he can get it over to somebody.
That's a different piece from, are we truly fulfilling our workers' comp plan? I don't want us to get to the point that we find out that our workers' comp plan is not valid.
The only reason the validity of the question comes about is for taxation, so this would answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Can I amend that to be in 60 days we'll have an answer?
Could you just make the motion that I'll immediately send it to Mr.
Immediately,
Settler, and he
thank
will try to get a contact attorney immediately, because we're really at the mercy of the attorney, and you don't want to, obviously, not to speak for Mr. Settler, we probably don't want to hire the fastest moving attorney, we want to hire the attorney that will get us the best answer, the correct answer.
Hey, if you can just leave it open-ended,
You'll take it.
just say, I will, upon a determination, I'll report it to the committee, and then I'll let you know as soon as I get it.
And I'll send an email immediately to him this week or early next week.
All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passed. We'll leave this on old business as we await the response. C, under old business.
That was the one where you sent the contract back to go through legal to make sure everything was fine. Gallagher, we use AR for our vision and for our, voluntary policies that go through USAble, and we use them for Section 125 and several other things, and they've been our broker for a couple of years, so I'm just seeking approval. And since the mayor's the county general agent, it's approval to send it on to the mayor for his signature. And
I so move. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Approval for Gallagher to go to the mayor for signature. It's ready to go.
if he doesn't see any, as your agent, any issues with it, Mr. Scott here.
So then with the change in the agenda, we're under new business, responsibility of reporting EMA claims to risk management. This item comes to us from risk management. I believe everybody's familiar that Kim White is our risk manager and she reports to the law office. So in this item, we are just trying to determine the process of claims. The claims specifically, one of them we discussed earlier. We also have two other policies that flow through this process. I'd like to make the motion to suspend the rules to hear from Mr. Weiner so he can tell us the process. Second. All in favor? Any opposed?
So what do you want to talk about? That's what I'm.
Can you just walk through the process of the EMA claim?
Okay, so on the
For
claim.
everybody, I
So
know that we
when,
have to.
if we get a claim, for instance, we have a truck that got hit while in East Tennessee. I made sure they were okay, made sure, Tennessee Highway Patrol worked the crash. Local police officers, it was a hit and run side swipe. So Carter County Sheriff's Office was looking for the guy. I notified Kim, let her know. She asked if there was any injury. And then we started the process with the insurance company, got estimates. We've already received a check, and I've gotten it put on emergency services agenda to go there to budget to get approved so we can get the truck fixed. So my procedure, is everything going okay with you, Kim?
Well, I was going to clarify how the process
Yeah, so-
to go,
so-
if it needed to be reported to me on the front end, so that I.
I'm going to report it to you on the front end. So you know right out the gate, something's happening. I don't want you to find out about it from somewhere else since you, are responsible for paying for everything. So I immediately notify you and then keep you up to date on what's going on in the process.
Who initiates the claim? Who initiates the claim?
I do.
So you initiate the claim.
Because if I don't, then I have to go back and forth to get more information on the claim, then we've got two people doing the same thing, or I don't know, because the only thing she knows about the claim is the report she reads. And I should know everything about the claim. So I initiate the claim, and if they have any questions, they call me back, and I communicate with the, when they assign an adjuster to it, and I communicate with them, and I just keep them informed of what's going on, and when we get a check, and the check goes to Cheryl, then you should get a copy of that check.
It goes to Cheryl, Cheryl.
Cheryl Thompson in finance. That's where the money's deposited to go in the correct line, or when we get it from promotion services and then budget and then full commission to get the truck. This particular thing is $3,900, on this truck that we're talking about, $3,900 repair, $39,900 something, it's gonna cost $250 to get it fixed. So,
I'm curious with this truck, are we towing it back and we're fixing it, or do we have somebody else fix it?
no, it didn't require being towed, it'll be fixed by a repair shop.
Over there or over here?
In Hendersonville. No, it didn't have to be towed, he drove
He
it.
drove it? Oh, good, he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
I'm good, good.
Yeah.
I believe the item was mostly to understand the process.
Are you okay with the process?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's up to everybody else. I just wanted to know what my responsibilities were.
Well,
Because I feel-
what I know is you hold the money, you pay the policy. And my opinion to the committee is, if she does the claim and does everything else, we're making bigger government harder for me to work, and then she'll have to contact me to get information to tell them when I can tell them. And then any problem is on me, it's not on her. So anything that's done wrong is on me.
Terry, would the solution be just to have Kim file after he files his claim is complete, to file with Kim here, and that
Do
would,
you want to complete it?
that would probably be the easiest way.
Whatever you want to do, it's fine with me.
Versus the back and forth, that's just what I'm thinking from logistics, because if he goes to her and she has to file and ask, after he gets his file and answered with his carrier, where they're just basically forward her on the email or whatever he's
So
filing.
my only problem with that would be if we had a crash in county or anywhere, and risk management would need to be involved. Let's say there was fault, and somebody would try to go after the county, I think risk management should be involved in that. So,
Barring that it has something where he thinks that it needs to go up front.
right,
This sounds very reasonable. Is it a possibility we could get a written procedure?
yeah, I mean, it would
That would,
basically
and then we all know what
be,
we,
I send information to Kim as I receive it, so.
yeah, and then,
yeah.
just to clarify.
Yeah, we do.
I
We
think
do.
that would be appropriate, a written.
The thing that I'm sure we're looking at is factual. If the county's involved, then we need the procedure versus if we're not involved. That's.
I think so. I think if myself, Nikki, or, Matt, or Carla were in a vehicle and we did something that, was wrong,
That's what.
I think somebody might come after the county, and I think risk management should be involved for an informational perspective. Yeah.
I just don't want to mess the work, so I just wanted to clarify how we needed to initiate claims.
Right.
So just to reiterate, what Mr. Long is suggesting is once you wrap it up with all the
Get it
discussion,
all packaged up and then send it to them as one package.
and that we
That's
have,
fine.
we have the documentation all centralized in risk management.
After he makes a claim, he gets it all tied up, send
And
her a
then
copy
could
on that.
you, when there's a written policy and everybody good with it, send it back to the board?
Yeah.
Just clarify.
unless I'm mistaken, I think right now, and Kim can correct me if I'm wrong, if there's an accident, I think, because it involves county employees, everybody reports it to risk management anyway. Not necessarily the details of claims, if he has a wreck in his vehicle,
Yeah.
or gets hurt, he reports it to risk management anyway.
I think she should get that on the front end rather than when things are wrapping up.
Yeah, we do that, but well, all Kim was saying, in other words, report it to her, something happened, but get all the details to the insurance carrier before he goes back and forth. Which I think, because you do need to report it to the very front, for Kim's protection in the counties.
I still don't mind, in the past, we've had some incidents out in the county, and she's asked me to take pictures, and like, with other county vehicles, not that, like THP working, but I still don't mind doing that, or picking you up and getting you to the scene. So, because I did that with Lynn several times. The same thing to you, Mr. Silver, if you need to go to the scene, call me and I'll come get you to the scene on an incident, so.
Can I play with the lights?
You can drive, you can do the sirens. Jeremy Johnson did when they go into the bus crash, and he was all over the sirens, so, yeah. I'll be more than willing to do that.
That's a big boy toy.
Excellent, thank you. We'll go back into session. Oh, I'm sorry.
I did have a question.
One more question.
About, is there a policy countywide about notification of claims when they happen? Is there a policy countywide for that? And is there like an algorithm that they accident, if it says go to there, if it's that, go to there?
There's postings in should be in all the break rooms, there's one in ours about to report to
So there's,
risk management when you have an accident or you have a potential on-the-job injury claim too.
just one thing.
And we still have it, I believe, in our break room. I don't know when the last time Kim sent those out, but it hasn't been that long. Year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe.
Any more questions? Okay, so we'll move on and leave Downton with we'll be expecting a written procedure. Thank you. Next item with our updated agenda will be under new business employee request.
Let me talk about the history from what I can just recall
I
about the
would
whole
like
program.
that, yes, please.
This program was here when I got here, and it's been changed a couple of times, and there's the sheet here. And the question comes up right now is about continuing service, and we can look at the myriad of things. Item number 6 is an employee must have 5 years of continuous service with the county, and the questions come up, it does not say full-time service. The plan, when this was discussed, it was full-time service because only full-time employees are eligible. So it really, you can read all the steps and all the other stuff. So that's really the only question at this point. I don't think, and I think one-to-one's here, that all the plans have been done completely. I think the employee right now is just wanting to inquire, will they be eligible based on the 5 years? And it was always the intent to be 5 continuous 4 years of service, but it does not say that on number 6. And it does talk about an eligible employee, you can only be eligible to be full-time. I think right now we've inquired of one-to-one, and there's 3 people right now through the program, two people that are actually actively participating in this program. And the reason for the 5 years was because this is something that's not always covered, and they wanted to make sure the employee had been on the plan long enough that they've been premiums set aside by the county and by that employee to cover the procedure. And that was the reasoning for the 5 years. And then they also wanted to make sure it was medically necessary. That's the reason for all this. And if the employee was trying to follow alternative methods and being successful as possible, and then after the surgery be successful as possible. But the only real questions coming up today is how do you guys want to interpret number 6? And from my recollection, that was the intent, but you can kind of read it there, what it says. So if it's not 5 continuous full-time, you may want to come up today, it was passed out. You may want to come up with today, put full-time in here going forward, but the question comes to the person that was currently, and I think he's currently in the plan right now, started, is he one of the 2 that started, or we don't know?
I don't know.
I'm sure he's one of the 2 that started. So he's currently participating in the plan. He went part-time, a couple of years back for about 3 months, and he's been back full-time since fairly early in 22. And he was full-time quite a while before that.
April of 60 through January of 80.
He's been an employee since 2016 of January, yes. And he had a small gap in December 21 through April of 22 as a part-time employee, which means he wouldn't have been eligible. My question was, he may have been under his parents' insurance, I don't know, but that wouldn't have mattered anyway, because if you read the very top, the intent was just for employees, because we've had several dependents asked in the past too. The steps by an employee of Sumner County who is covered by the insurance plan. And it does say at the top by an employee covered, but the same question is down on number 6. It wasn't clear you had to be covered the whole 5 years. It had to be an employee for 5 years.
What is the total?
Bob, I'm sorry, Mr. Hyde is doing the two before you.
Bob, can you go ahead and then I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Well, just,
I'm sorry,
what's the total employment?
There's two things.
No, I'm of the employee.
It is, April of 16 to current.
He's been about over 8 years, because we're pretty far down in 2024. So we're almost going toward 9 years.
Madam Chairman, having been the longest serving member of this board, I took a little time off, but I was here from the very beginning. I voiced my opinion for a lot of guardrails to prevent abuse of various things in the program. But on this, I think if we did anything other than give consideration to this employment, we're straining at a gnat to prevent somebody from getting service, because he has 5 years of continuous service, a little break, and then back probably for good. Now, we just cannot treat an employee any differently than to do what we need to do to help them be healthy. I would strongly encourage us, he has the continuous service to, we need to change this policy definitely to read how we want it to read, but I think in every aspect of this, he meets the standard, and we need to proceed with helping in this case.
I'm interested in listening to you next.
Pardon?
And
If you're finished, Mr. Hyde. Are you?
I'm finished.
I'm gonna follow up, Mr. Hyde. From a legal perspective, you don't indicate the 5 years of continuous service. And I don't think there was ever a break in service. It was just whether they were full-time or part-time.
Right, the question is he wasn't eligible, so.
Right, but I don't think this makes him ineligible. It just says 5 continuous years, so I think this is a moot point. Go ahead.
Is there a possibility you could grandfather him and anybody else participating and then put the full-time in there? The original intent was to be full-time, but I can understand where he's coming from, and definitely Mr. Hyde, because it says continuous without the word full-time in there.
And I do agree, and I'd just like to say, we need to, this is just a small break in service, but the next one may be a 5-year break in service.
Well,
so we do need to readdress this policy.
I think I would be willing to make a motion that we grandfather anyone that falls into this category, and then proceed with whatever new policy we want to adopt. I make that form of a motion.
Let's allow Commissioner Janone.
Yeah, I agree with Chairman Hyde, and I agree with, the one thing, a comment I want to make is that when somebody goes into a program like this, I know this because I practice, when somebody goes into a program like this, or it's very difficult. A lot of them don't even get through it. And it takes a lot of time to what they do in all of this to make all this happen and get to the point where they want to move forward with the final process. And I agree that this is very vague. And to me, it's, well, like you said, continuous service. He could have been, maybe he went part-time. To me, he was still continuous service. He was still serving, the county. So I agree with y'all. I think that grandfathering in, because we had this issue somewhere else, and grandfathering this in is a good idea, and then correcting what you have as a policy, because I'm seeing this in other places where they don't like Mr. Hyde said, there's not a guardrail there. It's just very vague and very, it's muddled. I mean, and for this type of, and it doesn't really matter, even if it was somebody having breast surgery or something like that, you know, there's a lot of big process on that. So I agree with you. I agree with Mr. Hyde and motion about. I second it, yes. But I wanted to make that comment because I know how hard it is to go through this process.
I don't request it. Since you're gonna grandfather, can you also include to put the full-time verbiage in?
Yes,
So that's what we wanna do with number
Yes.
6, is say, continuous full-time service.
Yes.
I'll make that a part of my motion.
Second, I'll second that.
Finish, I'd like to say.
You're in the queue.
Okay. Well, all I want to do is thank you for your sensitivity to this issue. We could have taken 1 or 2 stances, but y'all took the compassionate stance, and I want to thank you for looking out for our employees.
Yes. We need to vote on.
I know we need to vote. I just have one question. From the benefits, do you have anything to add to this that we should be aware of or we have overlooked? Do you?
If we're specifying full-time service, do we need to also specify that they're covered under our insurance for that full-time, that 5 years or whatever as well?
Yep.
Because that'll be another question that
It
gets presented.
should be, that wasn't about full-time coverage under the county's insurance.
Can I ask the amender?
I will do that if Mary will second
Well,
it.
I would like to ask you to ask them to just bring the policy back for us to look at. we can make sure.
Bring the policy back for us to look at.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh,
No, Ms. Mary, I don't, but, can we have one-to-one to explain the actual program? You've got the sheet here.
I would like that, yes.
Of what people actually have to go through to qualify. You can see it on the form, but you don't know how long it takes, and they can kind of give you a little more perspective
Sure.
on it.
So I'd like to suspend the rules. All in favor? Aye. 1-1. Could you be so kind?
Absolutely.
And could you also give us, when you report on this, can you give us the date, like when we started with the policy? And could you focus on, I'm interested in the cost and stuff, if you could add that into your briefing. Thank you.
So when this started, I do not know. It started
It's before my time.
way back.
I came in '09, so it's been here years.
We don't do a whole lot, we don't see a whole lot of these. But what the employee will do is go to the benefits department, they are given the packet, and then they complete the steps. So they call our call center and they go ahead and get set up with one of our providers in clinic, and we have a specific visit type that we use so that they know what they're coming in for. And then the provider then will just discuss their previous struggles that they've had. They do a monthly weigh-in, so they will physically see this provider for 6 months. Everything has to be documented. They are given healthy lifestyle tips and tricks. They meet with our dietitian. We have got fitness. 3 of our clinics have got fitness areas with treadmills, so we open up our facility to them if they do want to use those. We would recommend a surgeon that is a part of the plan that is, I guess, on the good list, and somebody that's not absolutely outrageous. That we also, if they choose to use us, they can use us as their psychologist, so they can use our behavioral health, because there's obviously a lot of psychological issues that can happen before, during, or after the surgery. Yeah, but typically I would say probably 6 to 9 months, really depending on how quick they can get in with the bariatric surgeon, because sometimes that can take time as well. But it doesn't cost, I say it doesn't cost us. It does, because our services are passed through, but it doesn't cost the employee anything from one-to-one standpoint. we also would need to take into account their surgeon may have requirements for them to meet for their set program. So if they were required to be at a certain BMI prior to surgery or had sustained a certain amount of weight loss prior to that surgery, it could take longer than that 6 months, depending on that patient's adherence to the program, how well they do with diet and exercise. As Kelly mentioned, a large component of this is really that behavioral and lifestyle modification piece of this. I think one of the things that's not detailed here that one-to-one is really great at doing is supporting them through those changes. For a lot of these patients post-surgery, learning to live with a smaller stomach, how that impacts your ability to be able to integrate back into family function. Societal norms, knowing that that is different. A lot of these patients go into it with, I want to lose this weight, and that's my goal, and they don't realize the impact of how the surgery will affect them, things that they can and can't eat.
Right.
And so one-to-one is very passionate about making sure that we follow them through that process alongside their surgeon and their bariatric team, that we have the capacity to support that ongoing, even post-surgery. So I wanted to point that out.
I think that is great. I have a friend, and she didn't realize she had surgery. She didn't realize that Thanksgiving would never be the same again. That was a big thing. She talked to me a lot about Thanksgiving.
And everything that we do is so centered around eating anymore, And so I think for people, the goal is that let's just get thin, and then they don't realize the impact on their life and how that's going to affect them. Similar to, I think someone mentioned other forms of surgery, affecting the same thing. And so there is a large component for us to be able to support them through that process.
Can I ask ESP, do you have an idea on the cost? And I want to explain to the board, we created this policy some years ago. Nobody seems to, but this $18,000 was a price that was set at some time in the past. If ESP could tell us what the surgery cost looks like now for the employees.
So Blue Cross reported back to me that it usually costs between $20,000 and $30,000 to have the surgery. I don't know all of the elements that goes into that cost that was quoted, but that was a Blue Cross, so I would assume with that statement that means it was an in-network provider.
So as we go forward looking at this,
Is that specific to sleep versus?
He didn't give me that. Yeah, he didn't give me I just asked, yes, for weight loss surgery. Again, this is assumptions which are dangerous, but I would assume that it's probably bariatric surgery, not the sleeve. That should be significantly less, so I think, but.
I can speak to the history. This program started before you had clinics, and it went through quite a progression. You probably remember some of those discussions, and it was a blessing to get the clinic option included, because before that, the patient had to get a doctor that under certain certifications. It was a lot more difficult to get started. And then when the clinics came in, and then where we are now, it's been just refined over the years, and it's turned into just a wonderful benefit.
Mr. Hyde.
I have a question about this. Now, who will actually choose the surgeon?
I think they should, just speaking, but I'm pretty sure our providers would give them a choice of in-network providers with the insurance, and kind of let the patient choose, because I may go see one, and I don't really care the way that they approached my surgery, and then go see another one. So I think they give them like 2 or 3 options that they can choose, our in-clinic providers. And a lot of people, I talked to a friend that I work with, and they use this one, or they know a family member that used this one. The patients can also bring it to us, say, I would prefer to use this surgeon.
I'd just like to make sure that everybody has input,
Right.
input.
Absolutely.
I think the reason, unless I'm mistaken, we're covering a finite amount, but we're trying to get Blue Cross and Blue Shield to use their contract discounts for the employee, and that's not covered. Right. So that's why you're asking them to go in network, because there's all these discounted contracts. So even though we're only paying $18,000 check max, you can still use those discounts, which would bring some of that cost down, so it's highly recommended the employee uses the.
And I would like to say, this is a lifetime change. This isn't just, a couple of years after. This is a lifetime change. I mean, I have read patients that have had this done, and this is a lifetime change. It's a serious surgery. It can have complications, and a person that does this, it has a lifetime change to the rest of their life. There's a lot of things that go into play for the rest of their life, so it's not just get the surgery and you're done. It is a lifetime of change. So if somebody's going to do this, I give them a lot of credit for wanting to do this, if that's what they want. But the realization is it's forever. It's forever. Thanks.
Benefits question. You mentioned there are 2 people in the program. I want to be very clear with the grandfathering clause. Does those 2 people include the employee we're talking about today, or is this 2 additional people?
I didn't ask for specifics, I just asked how many were in the program currently.
If you could just get that item so that we can be sure on who's grandfather and make that clear for the future.
Also sure that was the one-to-one that we need, so that we can make sure that we are adequately and appropriately supporting those patients wherever they are in the process. I'm new to this group, and so I want to make sure that one-to-one is doing our due diligence to support those employees.
And if we could go back, where does the paperwork start? Does the employee show up at one-to-one or at benefits?
They have, either the doctor or the employee contacts me.
You start it.
Already in date.
And they gotta bring it through one-to-one, and then we get the copy back here.
Okay, very good. Does anyone else have questions on this item? So we made the motion, we second, and we approved it. Just to reiterate. We'll move on. We'll come back into session. Thank you. So that concludes the items that we brought to the top of the whole business. We'll go back. Sorry for the moving around, but we have to release some employees back to their work with this. So we'll go back to old business. We'll be on item D. The bull run doc is on our agenda again. I believe last time we put that to rest. Is there anything else?
Tourism is taken care of.
Yes.
So that item is removed from our future items. Next item on the agenda is Department Motor Vehicle Training Plan. Last time we asked that we would request for the department to send in their training programs. And I believe they're sending them in to you. Right. Can you give us an update on how that's going?
I have gotten responses from several departments. The 3 departments that have policies, I've got their policies right here. So EMS, ECC, and Sheriff's Department have a policy currently.
This highway? Highway doesn't.
I didn't see anything.
Okay.
So the other departments that responded, they stated that they followed the county policy. So here is an excerpt of the county policy and the, what they cover.
So
People like codes
They follow the county policy.
okay, so if I could clarify, I'll reiterate what you said. ECC, we have a policy for ECC, we have a policy for EMS, and the last one is the sheriff's office. Yes, ma'am.
It's one-to-one though.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for your
Thank
help,
you,
you were
guys.
very helpful in clarifying all that.
Our pleasure.
You get another copy, Ken?
Oh, sorry. When we say that the other departments fall under the county policy, I assume that the clerk's office, do they have the, I'm just wondering who would not, does the clerk's office have the vehicles, does Carolyn have a truck that she drives to Hendersonville, or does anybody else? Who are the other county departments that drive our county vehicles?
Tax assessors have
and
Mayor's office.
and mayor's office, and,
Highway.
highway department,
Maintenance?
that would be John's office.
The big question is what happens when they don't follow these policies? And they're all, and risk management becomes aware of it.
I mean, all of the departments know that if they have a vehicle accident, that they report it to me, or to our office. So, they do know that, but they don't have a specific policy.
No, obviously, how do we know they follow the policies is the question.
They do know how to process it, how it's supposed to be processed.
So the only one that we don't have any conclusion from is highway.
Yes,
Well, they would fall under the small county.
if that's what they're following, they didn't respond to my.
Oh, they did not.
I had nothing yet.
Could we get clarification?
I will,
If they follow the county policy, that's fine.
yes,
We need to know.
but they do know how to process a claim if they have one.
It's really only about, that's what has big vehicles.
I have a question.
Mr. Johnson,
This, Commissioner,
Commissioner Snow.
yes, ma'am. I have a question about where it says vehicle use policy and guidelines. It says all accidents or incidents involving a Sumner County vehicle or employee while on duty must be reported daily to risk management. So, you have this statement right here, and then you have these three. So, my question is, why do you have this and you have all these?
Well, the larger departments that have many vehicles, they develop their own policy.
I got you. But do they, like we talked to him earlier, Mr. Widener earlier, the blanket, that's what I'm getting to, is they all have to report to you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's, all right, I just want to make sure, because
They're supposed to.
they're supposed to.
So, and let me ask legal and finance. My understanding is that we have a elected officials such as the sheriff's office, they have every right to set their own policy.
Personnel policies, you know.
What about the training? And then, I mean, risk management, we have to manage the risk. But then, everyone that's not, the mayor would fall definitely, all mayor departments would fall under the county piece of the policy. It's my assumption. Okay. I would like to task the board members to review these policies. There's a lot of material here. And we can put this on old business and discuss it. I'll just say it, I can't get through 100 pages right now in 2 seconds.
Can we bring this back?
Yes,
I have no idea what this is.
Between now and then, Madam Chairman, could we get, our legal department to tell us our liability and the way we're operating? Because I feel really uneasy with what I'm seeing here in that there are many different policies for many different, several different departments and, even county generals. Makes me uneasy because, how liable are we by policies being set that are different? And then there's some liability claim, and the legality of that. And people binding us as a county by policies that they are establishing in their department. So I'd like for, if we could ask I'll make a motion to ask our legal department to bring back to us, because I really like to look at this further, to bring back to us, just sort of a synopsis of all of this on our liability, consequences, and so forth.
Okay. Very good. More discussion from Commissioner Brown?
I only see two things on the county that basically deal with this safety and vehicle use policy guidelines. That's all the county has as far as that goes?
That's in the county.
I anticipate that we'll be able to enhance that significantly.
And then if this is the policy that all the rest of them have, as far as department vehicles go, that's pretty extensive then, but.
So we have a motion on the floor. We have a motion on the floor for legal to explore the difference in the policies and if we need a consolidated approach to this, I believe, if I restated that correctly. And if I could have a vote on that, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passed. I would like to make a motion to get a list of accidents from vehicles for the last
We can get you one from January to present.
January to present. Can we go back, let's get a little history. Would it take resources to give us a history of, say, 2 to 3 years?
I can tell you, I've asked Ms. White to generate a report for me that breaks down by department and then the costs associated with the vehicle accident. I'd defer to her as to how long it take her to get information that goes further back than that.
Is it electronic or paper?
No, paper. I'll have to do some research. I can get you what we've paid easily, but things that aren't, we don't have any costs on or department handles. See, since we don't have automobile insurance, the vehicles, if they damage one of their in-department vehicles, their department pays for it themselves. It comes out of their budget. It doesn't come from risk management. I only handle repairing other people's property if we're at fault, or recovering from insurance companies if someone else's fault and we recover from another insurance company. I get a report of all vehicle accidents, but I don't specifically, they're not in our system per se.
For self-insurance.
So I can pull that
So
information.
if we have an employee that's in one vehicle, incident, they backed into the fence post, you would still get that report, but they'll take it to their shop and they'll fix it.
And the department has to fix it themselves.
And there is no cost associated.
Not for risk management.
Comes out of your other budgets,
Yeah.
Right, our garage budget or something.
Whatever body shop they take to for repairs.
That's why.
But the department pays for it, not risk management.
So I would like a report of, start with at least the accidents that you have record of.
How far back?
Can we start with January to present?
Oh, yeah, I've got that already. We've already pulled that.
Okay, then can we have a bigger ask, for the prior year?
Okay.
So we can see some type of history.
We'll keep going back, but she said no.
I think it's important to see some type of history if we're hearing that there's a potential that accidents are on the uptick. So if we don't look at history, we will not see that.
So January 23.
Groveland County, you want to be.
Yeah, that'll work. So I made the motion to give the report. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Anyone else with questions on the training at this time? We'll go to item F, ESP, and CIA. So we have, as you recall, we've spoken about this several times. We have ESP that provides service to us as well as CIA. So today we've invited both to speak on, to answer questions and that sort. So I'd like to suspend the rules and ask CIA to present, if you could address the board. We have a lot of confusion around the different pieces of our insurance, and I don't want to speak for the insurance pieces. And if you walk us through how a broker works, I think that would be helpful. What would help the other board members in this? I want us to all hear how the broker works and how they obtain the insurance, how, maybe some history from Mr. Loring on how we've done this in the past, and that sort of thing. Do you have any input?
Well, I just know that my insurance guy, because I have lots of property, they use a broker. They broker with it. you know, they do a book. And then the other thing, I have to say I'm somewhat ignorant about what ESP versus CIA means. I understand what we talked about on that, but I am a little bit ignorant. I know about brokering insurance because of what I have to do, but like you say, I'd like to understand the difference between CIA and ESP. There's CIA and then ESP. So I understand if they're not, what I'm looking at is there a duplication of services?
I don't think so. They're just different things, but I think.
So, when they speak, what we need to hear is basically take us to just a very simplistic level and bring us forward, like how the broker works, how the fees and stuff are different. And then also, there's going to be some questions, and we're supposed to handle it now. The next item up is the insurance sheet, the comparison on the numbers. So what I think I know that I would like to hear is how your company validates or comes up with a cost of 4-hour insurance. The process used. Sure. Like how, I could look, let's say this building is $10 million, it's not. Well, it might be. So what functions and software you use to come up with the values, and then how that process works.
Sure. Well, is everybody okay with that? First, let me introduce myself. I'm Shauna Brown. I work with Commercial Insurance Associates, or CIA. We're located in Brentwood, Tennessee. And we've actually represented the county since 2021. And we are one of the largest independent insurance agencies in the United States. So an independent insurance agency like ours, we have multitudes of insurance companies that we can go to market what we would call an account, whether it's an county, whether it's a restaurant, whatever type of a business it is. And by doing that, so we can bring them in, we can take them and bring in all the information, we can submit it to carriers that will accept that type of business. So some carriers that will write the restaurant across the street aren't going to write county's insurance. So you run into limitations. But what we do is we take all the information, we submit it to all of the carriers that we feel or we think will want to write the insurance for the county. And at that point, they do their rating, which is what they do. They take if this building is $10 million. And there are each individual insurance carrier has their own file with the state rates, and filing, each insurance carrier has to file with the state. There's different factors that go into it. So that's how you come up with an insurance premium. And that's why premiums are different from one carrier to another, because they don't have to be the same. So that's where you come up with differences. All of those quotes, or some carriers mean, we will get quotes, we will get declines, we will get quotes that might not have everything that we want, all of the coverages that we want. So we may not want to bring them in because they don't have everything that we want. We want the carrier over here that's got everything that we want, especially when it comes to the property coverage or the liability coverage. Then there's other types of coverages like cyber. You have to write that over here on a policy by itself. And so we do all of those coverages, bring those in, put those in a proposal, bring those to the insured, and that's how an independent agency like ours, that's how those work in a very short nutshell. But like I said, to come up with a premium, there's a lot of different factors that come into that. Now, there are, our agency also, since we've worked with counties, our team partners with Bob Seville, with Seville Public Entities. They are experts in the public entity arena. They have markets that our agency is not able to access, such as states and some of the other carriers that we have a few of your policies with. He has pulled some of the information, but we, when it comes down to like the property valuations, property premiums, things like that, all insurance carriers are using calculating programs such as CoreLogic, Marshall and Swift, things like that, that calculate property valuations based on the address, the type of construction, the year of the building, different things, what it's made of, all types of different things that go into the type of the roof. Is it sprinkler? Is it not sprinkler? To come up with a valuation.
And if I could just ask you on that, so if we just use this building, this
Sure.
block, so you would call ABC Insurance, we're going to insure this building, and that insurance company would use their software to say this building is 50,000 square feet, brick, sprinklers. They would like do that. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, I can do it myself. There's actually, I mean, I have access to those. There's not necessarily just an insurance carrier, but there's several programs out there. The insurance carriers usually have it into their rating system, so that it's kind of all one step. Yeah. But I do have access to very similar to a CoreLogic system that I can put information in, and when I put it in, I'm going to come in very close to the same number their system's going to come into. So there's not going to be one that's going to be, 5 million and one's going to be 10 million. It's never going to be that big of a difference to where a policy is going to be a lot lower in your property values versus something that's going to be a lot higher. And if we did get something like that, that would be would obviously cause questions to be asked, like what's the difference? Why are these values this and these values this? Before we ever, something would have to give somewhere. We'd have to figure out why there's a big difference.
And I'm just asking in order to ensure that we have enough. Coverage.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's my primary.
Yes.
To answer her question, can I ask a question, make sure I'm understanding?
Yes.
You guys do the policy for one large blanket. There's all our buildings and stuff in there, but it's one large blanket coverage.
Correct.
So for instance, if we had a building blow down and we had it on there for 10, and it ended up being 12 for some whatever reason, we wouldn't be in the case of reinsurance because it's one large blanket that covers.
Right. You're not going to be short on the co-insurance.
The co-insurance is what I'm saying, because in other words, if we insure below a certain percentage and there's major damage on that building, we end up considering co-insurance because we've got that large blanket that covers all these co-insurance doesn't come into play.
Right, correct. We have them listed, and we do have them listed individually, but it is an actual total blanket policy for that reason.
So as long as they're listed, and they're listed materially correct, like size and stuff, materially, there's something,
yes,
then we should be fine.
And relatively close to what they should be.
What they are, type of building, where they're at, square footage, and they're listed, then the dollar value is not important, is the correct description of what they are, and the total dollar value is materially correct.
Yes.
So we don't get into reinsurance.
Yes.
I think that's what Terry's asking, maybe I'm wrong, you're asking about concerns for reinsurance on buildings if we're underinsured.
Yes, just checking. And I'll just say, I spoke to Gallatin, and they have a lot more insurance on buildings than we, the county, and they can't quite believe that their buildings are insured for so much less, or so much more than ours. So that's the reason I was asking.
I have a question about.
And some of that could be, some of that does have to do with construction. So, block concrete construction versus frame construction, or, if it's just wood, siding, or if it's actually block, metal, that also depends on your value, and how much it costs to reconstruct a building.
I didn't ask them for their list, because
Sure.
I got enough work to look at myself, but I did say.
So it's hard to.
It seems like almost double building.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big change in 21, when was that DOE leave?
It's 21.
21?
Then 21, yeah, when the school board.
I mean, before they left, of course, we would be much larger with all the.
Yes, it was about $500 million.
And we left, they left with the minimum notice, so the county had to obtain insurance fairly quickly that year, because they were suddenly out of the picture.
So if you could help me understand, and I'm with Commissioner Giannone on, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
This is a blanket insurance policy, correct?
Yeah.
Over all the properties. So I have a question about, say, for example, you're talking about there's catastrophic something happened to a building, and that happened, and then 3 months later something else happened, and then you had like 4 or 5 claims in 1 year and all this, and then all of a sudden you say, you know what, you guys are like terrible, and you decide you're gonna cancel the policy, and that cancels all the insurance on all the buildings. That's one thing that I've ran into with putting all my properties under one insurance policy, is if you have several claims, not several, but you have in 1 year, maybe or 2 years, you've had several, for different reasons, weather and all that, and they come in, they say, well, you're terrible, and we're gonna cancel you, and so all of the properties are canceled. And that makes you go back and have to find a high-risk policy, which is way more expensive. How is that handled in that respect?
We can laser those out. Let's say you have one building that's vacant, run down, and they don't want to insure it, then we just sort of laser those out like they do on health insurance sometimes. And pull that one out and put it in that higher priced, vacant property market.
Okay.
And then we keep all the rest of them under your blanket policy.
So there's never that
Not all or nothing.
all or nothing mentality. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So, I'm sorry, Jane, maybe down there wants to. If you could clearly explain to me, because I keep getting confused back to what Commissioner Giannone said at the beginning. You mentioned that you partner with Mr. Seville. I don't understand who is CIA or what is the other organization.
Okay, so, CIA is we are what is called a retail insurance agency. So you or Sumner County, as an insured, can come to us. Okay, so we work with him directly. Even though we have contracts with several insurance companies, there are insurance companies that we don't have contracts with. So a retail agent will go to a wholesale broker, which is what Seville's office does.
We represent the carrier.
And they represent the carrier. So we're representing the county, he represents the carriers, and he has access to the carriers like states, and Alliance, and some of the other carriers. Now, we do have access to Liberty Mutual, which is where the property is, but we allow Bob to go ahead and do that so that we just kind of have everything flowing through one place. I mean, it flows through together. It's easier to do all the marketing instead of me marketing this way and him marketing this way. We just run it all through Bob. That way, when he's doing the liability and with the property of the large property values that you have, and he's going to the other property markets every year, that it's easier for him to go that way, because we really are limited on our larger value property markets for public entities. So that way we allow him just to kind of market everything that way. And that's where we use him because of his expertise in the public entity arena. So that's where we are versus where ESP is more of a consultant going to agents himself, or how they go to agents and he brings those bids back to you. We're working with him directly as the agent here. So that's the difference.
We add a little value. We represent over 300 cities and counties and utility districts, major universities. Anything that doesn't have INC after it, it's not incorporated. And so, we're in 20 states, and we sort of predict these claims before they come. Most of them we've seen before. And things like that, from the carrier side that we see, we can provide the expertise you need so that you have somebody that's totally focused on public sector. And that's all we do is public sector business. So.
Ms. Jen? I don't know, I was fixing my hair.
Today, we are getting a lot of information, and there's some more to come. But I'd like to ask you to understand, from talking to finance, that we're discussing as we go forward, as we look at this, do you think you'll be able to follow our sealed bid process here at the county? And I'd like to ask if the other commissioners understand what I'm talking about. So would you like me to get into more detail on that?
I think I do, but elaborate if you will.
Very good. Mr. Loring, could you explain what was happening and what we're going to what we are looking at as we go, no matter what we do, what we're gonna, how we're gonna follow the.
Right now, CIA, and they even went back and clarified in state statute as a professional service, so we don't have to bid CIA. The underlying policies are biddable according to AG's opinion and according to the state statutes, even according to CTAS. We haven't been bidding them because there was the presumption, because they've always run through risk management, that it's a professional service. Talking to the state, they haven't really been enforcing that, but they're looking to see if they need to enforce it or which direction they're going to go. So the clearest things basically follow the same process we do, working with CIA, so whichever one, probably CIA, because you actually represent us through the deal.
Correct.
They would basically, what they would do, send back all the specifications, we would advertise it, receive the sealed policies, and then hand them over to whoever grades them, come back and just verify it. It actually just adds one step to make sure we are compliant with that state statute. My understanding, talking to the state this morning, I think even talking to Mr. Seville, I think I talked to him, by and large, most entities aren't, even though it's required in the statute, are not bidding these policies, they're just doing a sealed quote. I think you can probably say that. Majority's doing that. Even talking to the state this morning, they confirmed exactly, well, actually, they told me that, and then Mr. Seville told me that afterwards. But by and large, most of them aren't doing it, but if you ask county technical, or look at the AG opinions or the statutes, which I even talked to Eric too, the statutes do consider those separate products that are biddable by their dollar size. So we plan to, if it's feasible, to bid with the agency, we got to make sure that's even workable because of the way the quote system works. So we're planning to try to comply with the statute if possible.
You just get the sealed bids back, sealed on the web,
We open with you guys there and then give you a copy to go back, and then we keep a copy and then come back with it.
Last week at the conference, I had breakfast with CTAS lawyers. It's something that is coming up across the state with other counties. The CTAS lawyers said absolutely it's biddable. So it's starting to come. It's not something that's been out there for a long time, but it's starting to rise up as an item that's going to be addressed.
So we're going to go ahead and try to address it.
And, like you were saying, the good thing about doing this waste, they've got, they're the largest and have the track record, and they have the horsepower to provide the service you need. And sometimes you'll get a sealed bid back on some other type of service. guy's a top shelf.
Let me be clear on one thing. No matter how we go, we are going to need somebody to write the specs and in there to grade the insurance with the, basically they'll be doing the grading and we just verify that we assist in bids, because any purchasing department in the state, unless you're awful large, which I can't think of one that large, would not have an office with a purchasing officer that specializes in procuring insurance. That's my whole point. Whichever direction we go, we need somebody with us procuring insurance. We need them to work with us. We don't need to procure it on our own, be writing specs or grading insurance policies that come in for complete coverage.
Yeah, you need that expertise in the insurance side to write it correctly.
I'm not at all recommending that. That would be an absolutely a problem. Make sure we're getting covered adequately and properly.
Unless Commissioner Janelle would like to write them.
Oh, no.
Anybody volunteer?
No.
So I say you usually go with things that are specialized, you go with the specialist. That's what I'll
Does
say.
the board have any more questions for CIA?
Did you have any questions on fees or anything else on, payments or anything like that? Or it was just
Right now, it's how it works.
Okay.
And we're taking in a lot of information. I don't anticipate that we're gonna get to the end. I want to get your information.
Sure.
And we'll share it with the other board members, and if they think through this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll give you my card.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Were you going to address my side separately as far as copy evaluations?
Well, I think I understand. If we can pivot to include item A under the new business insurance value comparison. Does everybody see that item? We'll also discuss that with CIA while they're up. So Jessica was nice enough to print this out larger. If everybody sees this paper, this is the paper we're discussing.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. High said he would like to hear the fee, but just to kind of speak, from my understanding, it's a flat $50,000 a year fee with no commissions or brokerage costs in there. They're all waived out. That's my understanding.
Correct. CIA's fee is $50,000 a year. They're generally, and we do that so that, because generally commissions are written into policy premiums. And so we do a fee, our fee is lower than what you would pay in commissions based on your premiums. Your premiums this year are $800,000. Generally, your premium or your commissions would be anywhere from 10 to 15%. So minimum you would be paying $80,000 this year in commissions. So our fee is at 50, and we haven't raised our fee, and we won't raise our fee. So our fee will be flat 50 as we continue year after year.
And what they alluded to, we took them in 21, that's when the Board of Education decided to create their own plan of leave. And they had like a very short requirement for notices, so there was a short notice. So we had to procure somebody to help with the insurance quite quickly that year.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the history.
This 10 to 15% fee, I'll admit, I'm not in the industry.
Is that 10 to 15% commission?
Is that a custom?
That is
when we buy
customary.
a house, we see a 5% that the.
Right, and in your insurance, yeah, it's in your, like, your home insurance, your car insurance, it's all built into the premium. So it's the same with property and casualty insurance. So it's built into your premiums. And that's how, and so that's how agencies get paid. So instead of that being built into your premiums, our agency is taking a fee for our services, and the fee is lower. So it's saving us money that way.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, another new $50,000 fees would be fine to do the purchasing with us as far as providing us with specs. You
just keep us in compliance with the bidding requirement.
So you got, see your fees will cover working with us to handle that.
Yeah,
Right, yes.
with the bidding requirement.
Okay,
Mhm.
perfect.
That's my understanding, but Eric, I'm telling you, I didn't verify that. I was assuming.
I did notice that, the Sumner County, the new building downtown Gallatin, the courthouse, I don't see it on here.
The courthouse?
Good shape at the end.
I see parking, yeah.
It's like 100.
Yeah, it's,
Oh,
Courthouse.
maybe the seven, I was the bottom.
It's, I think it's bigger than 100, it's big.
Actually,
I did,
Biggest it's.
old lady, I
don't worry. I understand from the courthouse, so let's just talk about the largest one for sure. So we went from 100 million to 105 million, and I understand it's a big piece and a unique piece of property. So was that 105 million, was that from the insurance company, or how did we arrive at the new 105 million? Did we just increase it, or it comes from the software program? And I'm just, since we were on.
Sure, I mean, I think our notes, we actually started at 130 million
That's correct.
originally from, the builder and where it came from, the cost of construction and everything, and it actually came back down to 105.
How did it come down?
We didn't get till, I'm sorry if I may interject,
Yes,
we
please
didn't
do.
get notice until, we'd almost exhausted the 90-day window on the certificate of completion. I happened to find that it had happened, and we had to get insurance coverage immediately.
I recall.
So we went in on a high number after consulting with David. We went in high, knowing that they'd give us an adjustment once the actual numbers came back in, and I believe that's how it went down.
Yeah, we dropped it down.
Was your high 100 million, 105 million, or 130?
Yeah, I came up with it, because I wanted to make
You
sure.
came up with that,
We came up with a high number to start with.
make sure we.
Right, and they adjusted it down to 105 because, and you gotta remember something, kind of what I was trying to point out earlier. The value on each individual building is not as important as that the overall values are correct and those descriptions are correct. So that's what's really important, that the buildings are included and they're described properly, as well as what type of structure. That's your most important thing. So if the building's completely off that list or completely incorrect, you may have issues. Unless I'm looking at it wrong, am I missing anything?
Yeah, we want to rigorously look at that list to make sure we have all the buildings on there, but we have blanket coverage.
And the buildings are correct type. And the only reason I say the correct type is just like you pointed out earlier, the block versus a wooden structure or whatever, will make a significant dollar value difference too.
There's other supplemental limits to the policy.
And we do have several controls. We have, like, Bob's group comes by and looks at them every year too, so we know if we're comparing these two descriptions, that we do have the correct descriptions.
Yeah, that's important to point out, that, you know, I think we've lost control of it twice in the last 18 months. We sent risk control in here to look at individual buildings, mainly the large ones.
And ESP works on that to make sure we got the correct description. I think they do it every year, if I'm not mistaken. So as long as Kim's compared the two, I feel pretty confident they're correct.
Yeah.
This group working on it, Bob's group, both. That's why I said I don't believe there's any duplicate of service right now, because they're verifying every year, unless I'm mistaken, your type and estimated values, which is very important that we have.
That in a minute, we'll ask them.
It's very important we got the correct type and building on there. That's very important.
And then this goes, and then, you know, we send out the schedule to Kim every year, 90 to 120 days before. So in like March, to start reviewing, to make sure if we need to change any content limits, just making sure all the information is still accurate, for the review, and that's when we start looking at those.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna look at that March date, because this board was surprised to receive the insurance with only 2 weeks to go. So we had to make a quick turnaround without complete information. So we're probably gonna look at that timeline of March. We'll get back to that, Commissioner
I have a
Chum.
question on, I noticed on here it says vacant land, there's no coverage. Isn't that a little concerning if somebody was to get hurt or something on a piece of property, there are liability issues? Cause I know
Well,
I'm
it's covered
scared.
on liability, and this is the,
Just the building
more
coverage.
your property
This
coverage.
is more structural,
Yes,
This is just property.
yes, so there is,
not,
yeah.
but the vacant land is different, so you would have different issues.
Well,
But you bring up a good point, I mean, that this is designed to, the general liability is designed so that, public sector is a little different from what your policies you have, because in the commercial sector, it's only covered if it's listed. In the public sector, it's covered unless it's excluded. It's just the opposite. So if you pick up a piece of vacant land, it's automatically covered, you know, because you're rated based on your net expenditures. That's why we always ask for the budget every year, and when we take that budget, that's sort of an all-encompassing rating that picks up things.
For liability,
For liability.
but not,
liability.
not for property.
Right.
So I was correct on property description.
Yes,
Yeah, you are correct.
Yes.
But the description is very important and it's included in the overall. Okay.
Yes, yeah, but a piece, because they did ask, or we do have recently some, vacant land. And we like to have it listed, you know, at least know that we have it somewhere, but if Kim didn't tell us and somebody's out there and something happens, it's not that there's no liability coverage, there's still liability coverage, because there is automatic coverage. If somebody decides to come back to the county.
That's the sort of things we're looking at all the time,
Okay.
you know, and we try to stay in close
I
contact.
just know I have to carry a rider for some of my vacant land
Yeah,
for
yeah, you
liability.
need to have those.
Yes.
And then if we could discuss the content and how that works, if it's the same process. And I was just looking on here to find it, it's been several weeks since I looked at this, but I think, if I recall correctly, and I found the Galveston Library, I think that the Galveston Library has more content insurance than this county building. And I know we've got our IT servers in here and some other
Right.
critical systems that would be expensive. And so how, does that also have a blanket? And how would that work if we have a building that goes down? Because I don't feel comfortable with the content value.
That's picked up under your blanket.
So I'm just,
Talking about.
and I know that they provide a list to you for fixed assets, and I don't know if that goes into this.
Well-
But I had a hard time, and I'm looking now for this Belvedere building, so we can look at that. It has been several weeks, I apologize, I'm not.
Fixed assets wouldn't capture that because we only capture over 7,500 large systems because it's so cost prohibitive to basically keep up with every little item in a building. Same thing, if your library burns down, unless you videotape, it's gonna be very hard to account for everything in that library. Just like people's houses, you have the same
Got
issues.
2.1 million, yeah, this building 2.1 billion, the Galveston Library 2.9 million. So I just don't know how that works out,
I'm not sure what this doing, maybe over 2 million.
It's picked up.
and I'm not sure they got 2.9 million either, I don't know.
I don't know, it's hard to say if that's replacement cost, if it would or not. We've
And,
got a
and
lot of
from an
people that do it.
insurance standpoint, do we need to be more specific, or do we just go along, because this,
The main thing is you wanna have a value entered on your contents.
that we
If you have
have,
zero under there,
yes,
then you don't have a contents coverage. But if you have $1, then it picks it up under the blanket. You know, and they may come back to you, you have $1 and it should have been $1 million. They come back to you later and say, okay, we need to correct this value and make sure you're properly valued under there, but it's not a manufactured claim.
So you wanna have.
The main thing we wanna make sure is you get your claim paid, you know.
so like with our vehicle sheds with highway that are zero, since you're bringing up zero, do we insure those vehicles, like highway has things
We have a contractor's equipment policy
that covers that, that's the reason.
Now, the sheds, I'm not
that's
sure
what I'm-
why they've got zero, but I think they're like little bitty tiny sheds, but they may need a small value, I don't know.
Probably pole barn.
Yeah, they probably don't have much of a value, but with the being zero, may need one on there, I don't know, it's kind of a question more for CIA or maybe even for, so I'm saying right now, we got the risk management department, we got a broker, and then we got,
So,
ESP that goes out annually value stuff, so Kim's comparing the two, that may be something that needs to be reconciled.
yeah,
So I would just ask that
building,
everybody.
well, the highway building in Westmoreland has an office, it has a bathroom, it has furniture in it, and then they have their little lean-tos where they keep their, big trucks and stuff. So I don't know, I mean, that to me would be a little bit.
So my
better
question
detail.
would be, is anyone looking at the content? And that would be a CIA question, a risk management question, and an ESP question. If y'all could just take a look and see if it's just floating along all these years, or anyone's ever looked at it. So I'll just.
I think a lot of the values come from the individual departments who report their values to you, don't they, Kim? 'Cause we get a sheet every year, please report the value of your office stuff, but honestly, like my office, we've got, almost 24 offices up there. It's been there for years and years, so those values are very.
That's all, I don't wanna feel.
They're very
I wanna make sure
fluid,
we're
we have
good.
computers going in and out all the time, and.
Just if you feel comfortable, somebody, I'm not doing it.
I think as long as they're materially correct and the overall blank is not materially off, is what he's saying is we're fine.
Right, and with
We have
your
a dollar in there, it's
content,
questionable.
and with, and especially with your content, so you said, a lot of it's gonna be, it's an estimate, it doesn't have to be, to the dollar, because things are gonna come in and out of here, you may move 10 of these chairs to another building, so that's different, but if you bring in something, but there could be out in some of these properties with the highway department or whatever, where they're just small sheds and there's not really anything in there, there is not gonna be a content, limit, and so that's why. But these do, I know that Kim sends, she breaks this out, she sends it to everybody, and she waits for people to respond back to her, because I do follow up with her. She's like, so hasn't responded back yet.
The 23 million that were insured came from the list that Kim had given you at some point.
Yes.
She sends out to each department every year.
Yeah, she sends it out to her people in your department.
So, how did it get different from the 22.5 to the 23.4? Like the two lists? I'm still trying to figure out how that happened. So it's a list that they've all agreed on, and Kim has the list, and he's insure on the list.
It could be a point in time, or the way the
A point in
buildings are.
time.
Or that buildings could be aggregated, but what you may ask him to do is look at buildings with zero values and reconcile it with
It's 23.4 is what we have. And, some of the changes where we adjusted the courthouse
And
claims.
we don't have to get into the weeds. We can talk about it later. Anybody have any questions? What? Was there right?
Yeah.
I do have a question for finance, and it may be in place. The letter from March of this year for the professional service for CIA, is this for the mayor to sign, or does this need to go through budget, or is this appropriate, or do we need to change this as we?
Here's what you got. Your mayor is for this committee or the county
Is this what we're
commission.
gonna look forward to for the next?
Yep, what I'm saying, like, for instance, if it's not under something specific to a department or an elected official, then your overall large stuff, the mayor is actually the agent for the county, for the commission. So when you guys approve things such as the IE's contract, and we don't budget this fund, it's a main fund, so the appropriate person is the county's agent to sign those would be the mayor on you guys' behalf once you approve them.
So we approve here on this board, will this go to budget then, or is it done here?
Done
I
here.
just want everybody to be clear on.
You guys are basically, when your original budget's done, all your insurance premiums are included in your budget to pay directly to, like, the reinsurances. For the health insurance, we budget them under the individual departments that makes the contribution based on the employees over to the health insurance fund. So that particular fund is not a legally budgeted fund, but we do include it for the budget as a plan for the county commission. So for your answer is, though, that will never reach a budget item individually, because it's already embedded in there.
In there, got it. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Would ESP like to describe what your function is for our county?
Sure. So we're employed security planning. You also probably see the name RAI, which is Risk Assurance Inspection. They are a DBA of ESP. It's all same umbrella. So primarily our contract with you all, well, let me start with what we do and what we don't do. So we primarily do work with public entities. That is all we work with, really, except on sometimes some projects we'll work with corporations. On the property, so I do handle health, we do employee benefits, we can help with life, we do RFPs, things like that. But when I say that we do RFPs or bids, whether it be on health or on buildings, we do not get paid by any insurance company for insurance products. So we are truly independent fully. There is no sometimes fee, sometimes not, what have you. We are not, we go direct. So when we do a bid or an RFP, whether it be life, LTD, health, or property and casualty, what we're doing is helping provide you those specs that can then go to any insurance agent, broker, company, someone wants to come direct, whatever that looks like for the situation. So we can do those bid specs and send them out. That is how we've handled that in the past, and that's still how we do it, because that is typically what auditors like to see, is the proof. Kind of like when you were a child and you had to show your work in math class, we show your work. So also on the property, since that's what we're discussing today, the risk assurance inspections part came about. They go and visit the actual building, measure pictures, figure out all those things that you've already heard today about block and drywall and a lot of other terms about commercial buildings that are very important when you're describing them. We create comprehensive reports and provide you with a replacement cost value for that. Okay, so that is our primary function with you all, is really the replacement cost value. I have heard multiple times that we visit locations yearly. We actually don't, because that's not in our contract. It requires a lot more work. But we do update property values. And so Jeremy needs to talk about the system that we use, because he knows that in and out. But I just want to be very clear, we are not brokers. We don't do that on any client. So we are consultants. So why don't you talk about the replacement cost values and how that works in the system that we use?
So, essentially, we physically visit any building you own. Initially, it was our initial survey several years ago. We went and saw everything you did. And then every year we ask you, have you changed anything? And so if you've added on to a building, we go remeasure that building, walk through that building physically, not on a spreadsheet. We physically visit the buildings. And then we recalculate the values for them. We're not here to work with brokers. We're more of an outsourced part-time employee of yours than anything else. We're not salespeople. I measure buildings. I take pictures of buildings. I know how they work. I don't do the sales part. So I am not a broker. I have no desire to be a broker. I guarantee you is what I do. I don't just say, well, we apply these square foot costs. Our system that we input all this data in actually builds all of your buildings brick by brick. And then if you get a per square foot cost at the end, it is not what was used to determine the value. It simply divides that final value and calculates by the number of square foot so that you know. I can tell you how much the roof costs. I can tell you how much all the components of the building cost. That's what we do. With any other questions?
Could you share the name of that system and where we?
It's 360 Value. This is owned by Verisk, which is another extremely large company that has been used by the insurance. In fact, claims people use their products all the time after a claim. They're simply using it beforehand. Yes.
So on this spreadsheet right here, are you the one that supplies the CIA value?
No,
for them?
I'm RAI.
So I know, but, okay, so this is one thing, but you're giving us another.
I think my values are on that sheet.
I think that if you look, Bob, at right up for square foot, which is 2024 building dollar,
That's very.
I think that is
Well, I was wondering how
GST
there's a difference
value.
between those two.
Yeah, that's the whole question that we're kind of exploring, is the difference.
But I think the difference is that CIA or RIA actually visits the building and gives the accurate description. So if Kim was taking their descriptions and sending it to her broker consultant, would guarantee that we are insuring the right type of building and the right square footage.
Right, and like one good example would be, we just finished a survey of a neighboring county of yours, and we found 3 of their schools, because they had previously been just managing them on a, okay, well, have you done anything? No, we haven't done anything, so we're just gonna slap 5% or whatever on it. And so we get there and we find 3 school buildings, that each of them had 30 to 40,000 square foot additions that were never included. This is just because if you don't put boots on the ground, you don't really know. No offense to your spreadsheets, but you don't know unless you've been there.
Terry, I think that they provide, between them going and measuring and looking at the building, if Kim gets the information and provides it to our consultants doing the list, I think that's a good internal control, that we're not missing. I think it's a pretty good value for your money between the two, that we're not missing a large building that doesn't get insured and it doesn't end up being on that reinsurance cap, and there's an argument that we didn't insure the building. I mean, I think it provides you a good control for the amount of dollars. It's like 70-some hundred a year. It's not that much money. How much was it a year? $7,200 a year. So we actually, with any changes each year, as long as we're doing our job, as the county, and we tell them, they go out and they get the type and the building, and then it receives Kim, as long as you guys direct Kim to provide it to CIA. I think that's a good control to make sure that we're not missing buildings off that cap.
I agree with you, but we had all of this information, and it was just through the conversation of this board that we realized that we had differences in numbers, but I agree completely.
So Jerry, how often is that updated? By zip code, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything is down to your location, so, they update their values once every quarter, but we only update your values once every year, because it's not feasible to keep sending stuff to the insurance company. But, yeah.
Regarding a couple of the biggest items on here, go back to when people are notified. And I would just like to ask for risk management, maybe we have some procedures, because we had 2 items, and it had to do with building the large courthouse that worked with a small courthouse that had the same problem, and the parking garage. The one item you referred to was there was a huge urgency to get it done because.
The courthouse?
Yes, the courthouse. So
Yes,
that was there was that. And then on this list, you'll find that the last item is the parking structure. So not that it's the biggest item, that's a variation here, but the parking structure we do have it insured at $12.6 million. That information did not make it to ESP, and I think it may be because maybe you're just updated once a year. You're not in, are they in the loop of something new?
Yeah, he valued it.
Right, we were told in
It was-
June, I think,
Yeah.
and so, we did it and sent it over to you, and
It
then
didn't
just.
make our statement of values because it was like at
the
that window.
end. It was at the very
It was
end.
on the policy, but it wasn't on the statement. of
How long
values.
do we have to add something to the statement of values?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah, it was middle of June, so they got it added to our policy, it just didn't show up on the statement of values from the insurance company. But
So it all works like we'd like it to.
But we have so long to report those 2. How long do we have to report a new building? It'll be covered back, is it like so many weeks?
I don't know how our particular policy reads, it's usually 30 to 60 days. Generally, we know, like, we knew the courthouse was being built, we knew, I mean, it took so long for it to be built, we knew the garage was being built, it was just waiting for that, that final completion of when the builder's risk is gonna end, and we wanna get that full coverage on
I
there.
think that may have been the timing difference, because this thing's right now still being complete on the very final steps, that's why it's showing up on one and not the other. But my whole point is we've got a blanket up here, so the values aren't as important as we have the building on there and the description, which they're actually physically looking at and getting all the descriptions, so the value differences, as long as they're significantly the same, I don't think really going to matter that much.
To your point, the blanket coverage was created because of how difficult it is to keep individual buildings correct. It was never intended to be relied upon. It's to help if a mistake was made, or the world falls apart and inflation goes to the roof. Things that's what it was meant for. But you still need to keep trying to get close. You have to try. That's what we do.
The description of the building.
So what are we insuring on? Which column are we insuring on? You hire the 2?
You've got what you've got is the blanket coverage is what we got. So the thing is, the building is in there and adequately described, and our blank is materially correct, we're good. And that's why I'm coming back to saying, the differences in these values, if they're not material, is not gonna matter. The big thing is we've got the building and the description in there. They're physically going out here and actually looking at our building and getting descriptions. If Kim provides that to our broker, that's a good control to make sure that we don't miss a building or description properly. I think for the $7,200 we're discussing, it's a very good deal to get somebody to go there and look at it.
Significantly different, like,
They don't have boots on the ground otherwise.
like the jail was 67 million and 54 million, that's pretty big.
These are the only real boots we got on the ground for insurance that really goes out and looks. Otherwise, we provide spreadsheets, he actually goes out and looks. So if we misreport a wrong type of building and Kim's giving it to him, and they're passing it on, it should be called that the building structure is completely wrong, square footage or type or whatever goes on.
Yeah, you send me out to see a wooden building and I see it's made out of steel, I'm gonna note that and tell the people.
And then Kim sends it on to our brokers.
It could have been that I was into the wrong building also, it's always peeling on layers to find stuff, and you have to constantly keep doing it because it just builds up like.
But I think it's a good control. I think it's a good control we've got right now to have both of those there, and one physically looking at it to report back.
At the end of the day, we need to make sure we're insured. Let me ask you how it would affect, and I'm looking at the jail item, we just put a new roof on, $2 million?
It's,
So does that, do we get a new,
Did you put a different kind of roof on?
I don't know,
Okay, so that's important.
I don't think so.
If you just replace an old roof, your insurance policy is already designed to give you a new roof. So that would not, your values are already valued at the cost of a new roof.
You're maintaining the value.
We didn't change the type of building.
Sorry?
You're maintaining the value.
Right, so this
nothing
building,
really
whatever kind of roof,
changes.
let's say it's $3 million worth of roof on this building, would put a new roof on this building. Now, if you, 20 years from now, for some reason, it's still $3 million, you lose it, or you replace it, it's still $3 million.
unless we put clay tiles and then.
Right, if you
we have to
change it,
talk about
like if you go from a regular HVAC to a geothermal, that significantly changes the value of the building. But if you just replace an old with a new one, there is no change to your value.
It's maintenance cost.
It's just maintenance.
Yeah.
That roof, we'll capitalize it in the county internally, but they're considering it maintenance because.
Yeah, that's where we differ on.
What would have triggered, because for just a brief amount of time, we talked about putting solar panels on the jail. We did not.
That would have been insured.
So what would have triggered us to have updated our insurance? Would that have been finance or risk management? Both of you would have known to update, right? You would have.
I know what I'm told.
Exactly. So who would have told risk management if we had put those solar panels up there that we needed more
We
insurance?
would have forwarded over because the contract would have required
More insurance.
insurance on those. That contract that we were looking at was a
So-
lease contract and it required insuring those panels.
So I just want to make sure that there is a mechanism in place that would do that.
I think what you guys may want to recommend, or Eric, or we do fixed assets annually for material items over 7,500 or major changes on the building. If Kim was just to request Beth to email her a copy of that fixed asset file, she would have. Yeah. If she does that, then it does, because it would have that new roof on, even though it's not insurable, but if we'd have put those, leased, stuff on top, it would have been a lease improvement, so it was there.
Okay.
And it's never gonna go out a year without it being caught, generally speaking, right?
You would think the thing before, and that,
Generally speaking.
well, how the whole library thing came down, I asked for Kim to give me a value, and the Hendersonville Library, you remember that? Nobody had told them about it, nobody had told Kim. I knew there had been a big dispute going on, this was before your time, and I started questioning who was insuring the Hendersonville Library. You remember that, Kim, because we don't technically own it. So it came into a big thing, but yeah, I look at those periodically when not necessarily every day.
Does anyone else have any questions on how ESP functions? I'd like to be very clear that there are two functions that we're getting from ESP. We're getting the healthcare consulting as well as the building consulting. Am I clear? Is that correct?
Correct, it's two separate contracts.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
two contracts and two pieces.
On the healthcare, they do help us write the bids for such as live. And so it's an additional service. They're also the ones that work with us. We decided to go out and rebid, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they work with us, getting the consultants to actually negotiate those contracts and look at those contracts. So they do a whole lot in their health besides this valuation.
And I have a couple of things to say about that before we get off of the
So essentially,
insurance value.
we're comparing apples and oranges here.
We have two different functions going on that can do some of the same things for us,
But
as
not,
far as pay.
but one of the things I see that's important is it takes a lot of time to go to a building and look at it and figure it out. And, you know, that, you need to keep that, because you don't wanna just shoot a drone over it and say, hey, you know, X-ray vision, I think it's this, you know what I mean?
Or like your contract to build the building's probably what they're gonna get stuff, from like, we provide you stuff from us, like maybe the contract to build the building, they wouldn't actually go there, I don't believe.
Another
I'm
thing,
sorry,
You guys don't do site visits, we would just send you like the contract to construct the building, is kind of what you're.
Correct,
So
yeah.
they don't actually physically go there, the only one that physically goes there is,
And like the Liberty Mutual will go out usually once a year, but they're only gonna go to 2 or 3, properties.
so they're basically keeping up as long as we report it to the type of building they're actually physically looking at it too, to make sure it's accurate.
So in front of us, though, we do have a decision to make here. As Mr. Long pointed out, he feels that this is a good control. We have values on here that have been constructed through the process that we heard from ESP, where they can tell us piece by piece what our buildings are worth. We also have values that are constructed through various systems that insurance companies have calculated for us. When we go to, we have time, because we're not going to get this is not going to have to be done until June, when our contract expires. But we're going to have to decide which one we want to insure, and I kind of like the idea of getting closer to the true value, even though Mr. Long instructs us that we're still properly insured.
The thing is, you've got to be having insurance companies willing to insure them for
What they would pay us,
Right.
what they would want to feel comfortable.
So
So,
right now, I think probably your clearest path would be to go
with what an
is
insurance
let
company.
the specialists over here on the values run with their values, and we use the stuff provided by our other company to ensure that they're all included and accurately described in that value. And maybe get Kim or somebody to skim through to make sure that they look the same. Well, if there is something really off, we can flag and say, hey, there's some big difference. Is there something missing? But I think that's kind of the best way to run, because basically they will get the determined values for what we're going to bid the insurance.
Because again, we also have to use, you know, we also have to go by you all to tell us, like, what you think. We don't know everything that's in this building, or everything that's in the library, or everything, you know, because we're not walking through every building. So we do, it's kind of a group effort. And I don't think Kim can go through every building either, so that's why she does send her emails out, to her contacts. And so, it does take, and it's something like the county I know it's a lot of details, and it's a lot of numbers, but yeah, it just takes, you know, it's a lot of people to make it all, work into the numbers.
Right, just to simplify the process, the insurance carrier is the final determining factor of what the values are going to be, because they're the ones who are going to pay the claim. And so, you know, what y'all did is great, as far as, because we could go to the insurance company, with what y'all have, and then, you know, what you calculate even better. I mean, the same, and then the insurance company's gonna run theirs. So, but at the end of the day, the insurance company will say, this is what we're going to insure your building for. And if we came in at say, $90,000 for the courthouse, and we had the right backup to say that. You've had that happen before. And then we give that to the insurance company and say, okay, here's how we calculated this, and maybe you got your square footage wrong, you got your construction wrong, or something else. And we can go back and say that, we got the documentation, then that's how we get those things, like you're saying, to the point we want to go. They have to agree.
Just as if I called my car insurance and I said I have a Ford 150, and the year and the model, and they would tell me what they're going to insure. I wouldn't tell them I think it's worth $10,000, and they'd be like, no, we're going to charge you for $15,000.
Yeah, or your homeowners, like,
Yeah,
they come back and
they
tell me
don't
my
know.
homeowner's value, and I was like, you wanna buy my house? But you're talking about replacement.
You also got to remember, Mr. Chairman, that they went out last year and tried to procure several quotes and got very few for us, so it's a pretty competitive market too. But we can't, I don't know if we can go out and dictate higher values on the building at all, to be honest.
Yeah, we went out to 21 markets last year,
I think we got 2 responses.
21 different carriers, and most of them were saying, oh, well, we're gonna be 2 times that price. Because Liberty really got a pretty good price. Their deductibles are high, everybody's deductibles are high right now because of the wind. And, we're becoming the Kansas of the southeast, but the rate that Liberty has on our property is so good that most of those carriers, like, you can't compete, you know? And even Travelers said that, so.
So just, yes, Mr. Shue, I'm sorry, which one of you?
No,
Y'all can arm wrestle.
I defer to Bob, he's wiser than I am, I guess it's very important.
I gotta say this. I did 2 things that are often misconceptions about values, and I just want to point out, just take a second. What a building or property or location sells for has nothing to do with what it would cost if a tornado took it away. Because all they're interested in is what it costs to put it back like it was. That and what it's worth to sell on the market are not related in any way. So if you look at something and you say, well, that thing can sell for 30% more than that, well, okay, sell it, but don't get it blown away by a tornado. The last thing is this. Oftentimes, people will build a courthouse or a large school, and they will look at the contracted price of that, what they've budgeted to build that facility, and say, okay, why aren't we insuring it for that? That makes sense, right? Well, there are things in insurance that aren't covered that you have to pay for, sometimes one time, in a new construction. Grading, site preparation, foundation work, very rarely unless it's a flood, and that's a whole other thing. But, so that is also often confused when you're looking at a list of what are we insuring this for. We spent another $2 million over that building. Yeah, you did, but it's for things that aren't insured. And probably you'll never have a loss on it. So just so you know, it's kind of more complicated even than we talked about. So when you get into the numbers, it's just important that everyone who don't do this every day has a good feel for where that number came from. So I just wanted to add those 2 things.
Mr. Knight, would you still like the floor?
Yeah, that was far more important than what I had. I have a random question, but I really am concerned about it. The archives building. This is very random, but how do we judge the value of, say, the archives building, an unusual building with lots and lots of rare and unusual books, old county documents, things that would take a fortune to find a copy of the same thing to replace there. And I see the contents of that building, if I'm reading it correctly, just $84,000. How would we be protected there? That's
Your building is just a building. The stuff inside of it.
the content is what
It's not, most of it's irreplaceable. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to pay premium for something that you may not be able to find?
I think you get that. What I'm saying is because I have a lot of old rare books, and I have to go through special people like elders and people like that to find those books. You can find them.
Yeah.
But you'll pay a fortune for them. So if you were to replace things like that in that building, and they have the same books that I have at home, you're not going to get it for $84,000.
You're going to need to find a specialist, and they're going to have to pay them to come over and do it. Just like when we do a historical valuation, we have to pay someone who builds historical buildings to come and say, okay, well,
figure out how much those are worth, what
So
it
if
would
it's a
cost to
special
find those.
situation like that, we need to note that and work on it separately.
I could just have a policy.
We need to do that.
Yes, and would you like to make a motion for someone to do that?
He has a comment.
Well, I was just gonna validate what you're just talking about. One of our other clients, Rutherford County, decided to redo their historic courthouse. I mean, replace everything in there like it was when it was built many, many years ago. One of which was they wanted the exact same wallpaper that was in there, with the same print on it and everything else. They have it specially made, identical to what was put in when it was built. That cost them an arm and a leg. And a little humor, we haven't had a lot today. The images that were stamped on this wallpaper were clothesless. I guess it's naked, okay. And there was some issues with the public, so they had to go back and develop stamps and hand to every image of this huge courthouse. So that's how some of your neighboring municipalities handle some of this stuff, but it costs a lot of money, but like Jeremy just said and others, that's not something we can do, because something very few people can do, and you're gonna have to pay good money to do that. Then, back to the insurance side of the world, you gotta find someone that's willing to write it, and if they will, at a premium you willing to pay. So that's a lot of stuff to know.
So what direction would we go? I'm not talking about doing anything like going back to something that was just replacing what we have in there. Would you do that, or where would I go? What direction would I go?
We can find companies who can come and do that for you, if that's what they do. And then they could give you that valuation.
I would like to make a motion that we, ask Bob to, research companies and bring it back to us that would do this, so that we can place a value on that, because I don't know if everyone knows what's over there, but we have some things that are irreplaceable. We have old documents of this county, which is one of the oldest in the state of Tennessee. We have old documents in the back of that building that could not be replaced, but the value of the contents of that building is pretty great. So I'll make that in form of a motion that we ask Bob to come back with a suggestion on it.
And if I could amend that to include some type of estimate of the cost of a special niche policy such as that.
Yes.
Would that also?
Because before we go and get it valued out, if it's going to cost us $500,000 a year to insure it, we might feel different.
It's an expensive.
So we just need an idea.
Would that also be respective of the old courthouse downtown in Gallatin, because that's a historic courthouse, and inside it's pretty, did we do it as historic?
It's just valued as the courthouse. I asked that question, I did this, and I was told to do it as a courthouse.
Can you recognize Mr. Seville, if he has any instance of any, that would be a specialty policy for you?
Mr. Seville, can you help us out
Yeah,
with
when I
that?
did the original survey, we asked them, do you want to do this historically? That's a whole other thing. They're like, no, just value, it's gonna run that way.
Would it be a separate policy in
Well,
place?
there's two things you can do. Fine arts policy. Fine arts policy gets you to schedule out the fine arts, is what you're describing, and what this contractor would do. And that's just endorsed under your current policy at the rate that your property rate. And if you went into an actual building, you can have historical replacement costs on it, which replaces it back to the operating, if I'm wrong with this, but that replaces it back just like the body. You get the Italian marble goes in there, and then you can have the straight replacement costs, or what they call functional replacement costs, and that means if they're going to replace it, it might be Georgia marble instead of Italian marble.
So,
You'd also like not build back using codes that are no longer, like if something was built to an old code that is no longer legal,
mix that conversation with Mr. Hyde's motion
Well,
that we're
and that's a
doing.
building versus
We're
what's
talking,
in
we're trying to
a new
know,
building,
based on your
valuable
experience,
content in it.
our archives building has historical books and things of value. So would that also be a fine arts policy for our contents of our archives?
Yeah, Bob, you want to respond? When you start talking about documents and so forth, there's some things you cannot replace.
Right.
Okay? So what you're saying is, what can I insure that for? So I have received some kind of value for the loss of that, which is kind of justified. That's one thing. It's another thing to replace, say, like we talked about, banisters or wallpaper or woodwork or marble or carvings or statues even. That can be done. Those can be replaced, but to get them to where historically accurate and so forth, that's another thing. But just for the system of the way the thing works, before you look at the cost of a policy, because what they're going to want from you is, what are we insuring, and what are you asking us to insure for, and what proof do you have it's worth that? So you don't insure something for $25,000 that's worth $10, and then you have somebody come in and tear it up, and we have to write you a check, insurance fraud. But it does happen. So I think the first thing that may happen is that you all define what you want to see if you can protect, and then you find a company or someone that's certified to value those things for you. Then you're prepared to go to the insurance world, because they're not going, insurance companies do not throw a number out and say, I think it'll cost, they're not going to do that. So I think the wise thing to do would be, first thing you're going to say, well, that's too much money for what they're asking. It just stays, okay? But if it's something you want to look at, then they're going to have to see it, probably come and visit it, look at it, take pictures, do research, and then come back to you and say, here's a price that this is worth.
Is the best point for us to start would be to ask our employees in the archives to make a list? Maybe they have a list. So we
I
can
don't
ask
think
them.
they have one.
Well, they have one, and that would include perhaps marking which of the books are historical opposed to the ones that are not so historical. Do they have a classification?
There are no classification system, but we've got to remember that in the back there and the cages from the various departments, you have some old deed books and things like that that are irreplaceable that I've seen that go back to the 1700s. And it might be that we need to try to protect those things by saying, okay, if a book burned and you could scientifically some way decipher what was in it or copy it or save pages from it or something of that sort. I just think we should be fully protected with the history of our county.
Do you want to look at some appropriations to scan in these documents? Because that would be.
Some of this may be imaged already, that's what I'm.
Yeah, some may be imaged. We could, if I could ask you maybe to withdraw your motion, and the motion was to have ESP come up with some ideas, because I think we need to work on what we have a list of and what we want someone to do before we
I'll
actually.
withdraw my motion and ask them, and I think Mary seconded it,
Okay.
and ask them to come up with, let's just ask them to come up with a solution to the whole problem.
And then we have two in the queue here. We'll go with ESP first.
So that we can better create what you're asking for, are you interested in the books as an item or the information in those books?
Yes.
That's two different things.
The books as an item, if we were to lose a rare book,
right,
and we had to repurchase that thing for $250 or $300,
right,
then I would like to replace it.
Okay, but you were talking about like the deed books, information, like public information, that probably needs to be scanned, preserved, so that we don't lose the data.
Yes.
Which has nothing to do with any of this. You're
Right.
gonna find
I was just gonna suggest, sometimes we get so focused on insurance, we forget about risk management. And sometimes it's like cyber liability, we put in multi-factor authentication, so we didn't have to use cyber liability. And here, since these things are irreplaceable, we need to first look at risk managing those documents and those irreplaceable items into a vault or a place that's not subject to damage. And if you can solve the problem that way, then the insurance will be great, but who wants the money? You want the document. So,
that was what I was going to add, was you may want to direct your funds that you're going to spend on preservation or prevention of those documents. Where are they stored? How are they stored? Is there a better way to do that? And so forth. So there's two ways to look at that. But yeah,
we're both on the same page there.
Yeah, we operate.
But let's just look at the whole picture and bring us back to the drawings. And that's my motion, and Mary will keep her second to that, because we have quite a library over there that I don't know if you could put that library in a vault. And you would need to make it available to people like me that go in there and browse sometimes. I don't know how many volumes, it's several thousand volumes of just rare books that are about Sumner County.
It would be helpful if we know exactly what, or an example of a couple of things or places where things are. That would give us a tempo.
So we have a motion, a second, for you to give us a general, just look, see, and we'll continue this conversation next couple of minutes. But before we take the final vote, I'd like to recognize Mr. Shipley.
I was gonna say, before you make this duplicative, maybe we need feedback from the lady that runs the archives building, what exactly she's got in play, what she's doing as far as storage, if these issues have ever come up before, because I think she would probably be a wealth of knowledge as to the best way to proceed on this, but I'm just throwing that out there so we're not creating too much work.
I'll be happy to introduce you to the employees of the archives building, because I think that they would tell you what you need to know about what you need to do. Are we ready for a vote? All in favor of ESP giving us a general idea of which way to take this, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item passes. While we're still on insurance, I'd like to interject a couple of items. I was at conference last week, so I'd like to update you on some new products that I ran into. There is also other options available. There is a state insurance pool that we might consider. I don't understand how it runs. I would like to have that information also before, as we go forward, in which direction. Currently, we have one model, but this is another model. The way I was introduced to the workpool folks was, I was speaking to Wesley Robertson, our representative from CCAS, and he and another gentleman were telling me with OJI, because I was discussing our issues with OJI, that some counties have found that they have went back to the state workers' comp because it's actually cheaper than running their own OJI. So in discussing that, they took me and they introduced me to the state insurance pool folks. So I just want to bring it to the board's attention that there is another path that some counties are taking. We can have them come and explain their product, which is completely different. I just want to bring it to your attention and see what your thoughts are. I would like to take this time to make a motion for an analysis of our OJI to see if we would come out cheaper going through the state workers' comp.
No, I'll second that. Are we going to have a comment before you?
Yes. for the OJI, that's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to know.
Happen to know something about OJS.
Yeah.
But you're talking about apples and oranges there. And the OJI has a limit on your amount you can pay out, similar to health insurance in some ways. And the workers' comp is a jointly and separately liable pool. I think it's the one you're talking about. And that puts you into a statutory type situation. And if you, by default, you're in OJI. And you have to vote and elect to be, to fall under the statute. And that's sort of how it works.
I think it's a risk pool too, so if it doesn't cover, I think we have to cover a portion. Isn't it a risk pool? It used to be years ago. It's not true insurance, if that's what they're telling you. I think it's a risk pool.
I don't know that much about insurance.
Yeah, that's just.
I'm just bringing back to this table, this board, what I was told other counties are looking at.
Yeah, and that's what reasonable, request.
Mr. Shute.
We've been involved in several other studies and actually constructed and written, documents for OJI plans, for other municipals in Tennessee. And I have suggested to the county on numerous occasions through the years that your OJI be reviewed. Because we've had meetings where it's been discussed and things came up and I'm like, really? So I got a copy of that and looked at it. And it really does need reviewed, updated. There's some language that doesn't even apply anymore. So, yeah, it does need to happen. And the other thing that was mentioned earlier in the meeting is, here's the way it works. It's real simple. There's an I-8 form in Tennessee. If you want to participate in a work comp, you sign it. No, agree, that's what we're going to do, you sign it. You are in the work comp arena and you buy work comp insurance, in various forms. Or an I-9, which I assume you all have signed. It's a one-page document and it basically says, we don't want to be in work comp at all. And we're going to do our own thing, which is writing an on-the-job injury plan or whatever you want to call it. And once you've done that, it's really not a good idea to intersperse the word work comp in a discussion, because none of the rules apply to you. None of them. So these are just very important things going forward, with how that operates.
For ESP to analyze our current policy as well as an analysis of the two costs, or that would be a separate service outside of your current service, correct?
Yes, that's going to require a lot more hours than when you.
We're currently in the middle of like reviewing, comparing yours to other OJI policies. That would be an addition on to that. If you want us to go get quotes, basically, so we can say, here's what your work comp quote would be compared to what you're paying right now. That would be different.
Usually work comp's more expensive than your OJI. The reason you go to OJI is you limit the amount of coverage. You go back to workers' comp, your coverage goes way up, including lifetime medical. If you're buying a workers' comp plan, your cost is probably going to go way up.
You also shift the liability to the employee.
To the employer, yeah. Because you have
Work
limited.
comp, you're just automatically, it's your fault. Because you're the employer.
It's a no-fault policy.
Yeah. OJI, they have to prove that you weren't.
And you got unlimited medical on workers' comp too.
Are you saying we shouldn't look at it?
No, I think you should.
I think you should look, but I think your cost, because you're going to, you can increase the outgoing dollars without increasing the ingoing. So when you suddenly open up lifetime medical and assume automatically that you're responsible versus possible medical, not lifetime coverage, your am telling you that you can go back to workers' comp and be cheaper than OJI with dollars and cents going in and out the door doesn't weigh out.
Yeah, you can't do that math in one policy.
The math don't work.
It's hard to say that it's savings when you don't know how much you're spending, right?
And
They
how
don't have any
it's
idea. Yeah.
So what I'm asking is, can you do this analysis and not, it is a separate, is that possible? Or, and I don't think so.
Can you help them quote us a fee for what?
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay.
And then also look at the state, because I'm pretty sure the state, if we're gonna do that, is a risk pool last time, which means if it does not break even, you cover what it doesn't break even.
Do you know the name of the state?
Are you talking about healthcare or property?
No, property.
For the workers' comp, I believe it's a risk pool.
Well, there's a couple of them, you know, there's two or three.
I think if it doesn't break even, you get assessed for what it does.
They're all jointly and severally liable.
Yeah.
They have to, you become liable for the debts of the pool.
Right, but the pool's not breaking even, because years ago when I was auditing, they had several counties had to contribute to the pool extra because it didn't.
We'll have to go back and have a conversation. And
Yes, can y'all come back to that?
proposal with a little more definition around it, what we would need.
And I can get you the name of the CCAS representative that started me down this path.
Yeah.
And he can give us other counties that have taken this path, and so I can call them, or we can push, we can see
We might even know
Yeah.
the person, so that would be, yeah.
This is a group decision. I make a motion that we ask DSC to come back with some, how did you say that?
Well, a proposal, what it's gonna cost me
Yeah.
to do the analysis, or actually authorize us up to a certain dollar to retain them.
All right, and I'll make the motion if I can get a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Got one item left on the agenda.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to say something, Madam Chairman, so go ahead and finish it.
2 items, I'm sorry.
Two more.
You got 3 items, there's the surcharge too.
That's two, total.
Adjourn, there's 3.
Okay, Mr. Hodge, you have the floor. Okay.
Well, I was gonna wait till the agenda was over, but I'd just like to say, with everyone in agreement, I'd like for, the chairman to place on the next agenda, the next time we meet, possibly changing, the title of this, committee from insurance trust to, insurance and liability board. That way, we can do as we did when we started, and start putting more emphasis on safety and prevention than just insurance alone. We're looking at just one facet of this huge, big problem. And we did that at one time when Tony Southern was here. We had a number of safety programs in place. Now, the problem is, we tend to say, well, we don't really know if this is paying off. No, you won't ever, because you won't ever know how much, you have saved in insurance from safety programs and what has happened. But I would like to change the name of this from just insurance board to the Sumner County Insurance and, Liability Board.
There are also companies out there that could help us develop training programs,
All
and
kinds of things.
we'd also need not just a training program, we're going to need some marketing of the value of these training programs to our department heads, and so to that value.
So if no one's in objection, just talking about that, I'd like to add that to our next agenda.
I'll second that motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We'll add that to the next agenda. We have, under new business, smoking surcharge, item D.
Tell you what that's about. The surcharge for smoking was added several years back. It's only $50 a month. The other surcharge is actually for spousal, which is $100 a month. Because of the health effects and the cost, this wellness plan's been a push for the, basically smoking cessation as much as possible. I just want to make sure the board is aware that it is so small, it's actually more than the spousal surcharge, which I don't know if that was ever the intent. Those things get buried.
Do you have any idea what other counties or
I haven't asked them, but we can charge, I forget, I don't know if you guys, it's a very large
It
premium.
used to be up to 50%, I'm not sure what
Smoking
the
more.
latest legislation dictates that.
Yeah, you can, that's one of the things you can charge under affordable care,
Yeah,
a very large amount
yeah.
because of the ill effects of it. So right now, you could charge on a family plan almost, what, $150. Is it the
Depends on
employee?
what your actual
I think employee.
premium cost, and then
Is the premium cost of employee share?
I really don't.
We need to
You
research.
can put it in, if
I'd like
you
to
stop
make
talking
the
about it,
motion
so,
that if you could come back, Mr. Lloyd or ESP, on what we're looking at, I would be interested in hearing those numbers. And I'll make that motion, that you'll bring it back to the next. Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No, but I would say, when you put smoking surcharge,
Tobacco use.
you might want a tobacco use product, because there's a lot of people.
Essentially, listed as nicotine.
I loosely call it as nicotine. It's actually called, and I only bring it up because we know we have a ever-increasing health trend, and it's getting worse right now. I've started to notice again.
Yes.
So this may be one way that you could discourage smoking that would help your health trend.
We'll be glad to put it on the next agenda.
The vaping, anything nicotine involved.
So, so that concludes our, old business, our new business. We have an executive session. We'll wrap us up. So we'd like to tell everybody thank you and have a good day, and we'll sit in here with the lawyer.
I think I'm. It starts recording. I still don't trust that thing, even though it says it's not capturing, because well, it says it's not.
Is everybody ready?
Remote listening is actually.
So I call this meeting, back into session from executive session. We have a question ahead of us from the executive session, item A. We'll be voting on to discontinue eligibility and benefits of OJI. We'll take this, in two pieces and see how it goes. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
I think I'm going to abstain.
One abstention. I'll vote. So let's have just raise your hand so that she can get it for the minutes. Ayes, raise your hand, and abstention. And that would be our vote. So the motion is to discontinue OJI eligibility and benefits on item A from the executive session. And that concludes our meeting. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Have a good day.